Welcome back to Leicester City Down Under. How's it going, Anil? Neil, we're back. How you feeling,
Very
lads?
good. Going to have a great Christmas. Top of the table. Fantastic performance. I think we've been good for Santa this year, lads.
We've been good.
This year, just this second part of the season. Maybe not the first part of the season. Let's just pretend that didn't happen.
Oh, mate. Like, do you know what this season's been? This has been like pure therapeutic. Like, after the last season we had, it's just like we needed it.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. I've been trying to, in between this, trying to read because Athletic is an article with Enzo Maresca or Rob Tanner has. I've been trying to read that at the moment. So halfway through that, which is quite interesting. But yeah, I've got the full bits of it. But he's been brilliant, genuinely, from minute one, what he's saying, even things I've read just in the Athletic article, he's doing things now that he's going, well, in the last 10 years, we've won the Community Shield, we've won the FA Cup, we've won the Premier League. Why are these trophies not in the front of the building of the training ground? And he's changed it, and it's like, he goes, yeah, it's a good question. He goes, well, why don't we put them there then? So that people walk in, they go, this is what we've achieved. Not in the last 100 years, in the last 10 years. I'm like, yeah, that's the mentality we need. Not that he's getting carried away with it, but he makes a good point. This is what we should be bragging about.
That's an underhanded dig at Tottenham, innit?
We'll take that as well.
Like, that's what I'm just kidding. All right, let's get into it. I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much to Anil, who's gone out of his way to make this for me. This is 100% beyond my capabilities, so I'm computer illiterate as it gets.
To be honest with you, that's a lot more worrying given the amount of effort that was put into the presentation. That's maybe you've got to ask for a PowerPoint book from Santa. You've probably only got 2 hours left to get one, though, so you're going to have to be quick.
Okay. I thought that took you eight. When I first seen it, I was like, man, that must have taken him ages. That's so nice. I messaged Neil. I was like, what a top bloke Anil is. And I just asked him before, I was like, how long did that take you, mate? He said, oh, about 20 minutes. And I was like, oh, okay. All right, lads. Let's get into it. So, mid-season review.
Right, yeah. So you wanted to break it down into some sections, right? So first thing is we're going to go through the squad. We're going to go through the positions, numbers, by their number in the squad and what we think about them, right? And then that'll probably be a good way. So we're going to look at a player basis first. Is that right? Or are we going to talk about the team? How are we going to do it?
No, I think how you had it structured is perfect. I would love to just go through just how you've got it set. You can take over here, mate.
Okay, well, here is our fantastic squad. This is it. It's funny how you see Wanya Marcel he's managed to sneak in there at the end after his contract disputes. They might have like photoshopped him out. So this is our team. So let's have a look at it. We've got just the 5 keepers there. We're not going to go through all of them. We're just going to focus on the ones that have actually put some playing time. So let's start with this guy, summer signing, Mads Hansen, number 30. What's the feeling on him? Maybe the way we should do it is everyone give their rating for him and then we can talk about what we think about him. So let's start with Neil. What do you think out of 10?
Oh,
where 10 is like N'Golo Kante, Riyad Mahrez, 2015, 2016 level, and 0 would be like Yuri Tillemans pulling out of a challenge, Danny Ward last season level.
Yeah, even it's hard to give him a 10 out of 10 just because the levels are so high, but I'm going to go like 9.2, 9.5 because literally he's been so good for us this season. And it's unbelievable how good he's been, and yet at the same time, we've not seen him because the defense has been solid.
Yeah.
That is a big part, but for me, I think that I would give him a 9, and I would like to give him a 10, but I think his ceiling, like similar, obviously much different positions, but like for Tawa, his ceiling's so high. I think it's great as well that we've got him signed to a 5-year deal, it is, I believe, because I think unfortunately we will lose him, but I think he's going to go for big money for what we paid.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I would agree. I think it's hard not to give him a 9 out of 10 at minimum. He's been superb. He hasn't put a foot wrong. I personally think when he first came, my expectations, I don't know about you, but I thought he looked great with his feet already. But I thought that he would probably drop a few clangers. Like I actually don't think we've conceded the goal yet. No, one. I think once maybe against Blackburn where he kicked it out, they got onto it and Sammy Schmudix put it away. So he's only really considered one goal. Like he has got away with it a few times, don't get me wrong. But I was expecting it to be like way more. I thought we might have conceded 4 or 5 goals through a genuine keeper error, right? And he would still be like a great player and everything like that. But I thought as a young player, David, but he's great at commanding the box. His distribution is elite. His decision making is good and it's getting better. Like there was a game recently against Birmingham where it was getting a bit dicey and you just see him absolutely clear it miles into the stand. And he's like, that's good to see that sometimes you don't always have to play it pretty, or he's been prepared to play it long. Really, really good. So I agree with you, Luke. I think a fantastic signing. It's funny how when in the summer we were linked with James Trafford, and a lot of people were disappointed because, you know, he was the Man City player and we thought, oh, we really want to get like the English under 21. Well, Mads is like 1/3 of the price. And if you look at the two of their performances relatively, I think we've got a better signing. So I think, let me see if this, if I refresh it. Oh, there we go. I'm giving him the 9. Boom. 9 out of 10 for Mads. All right, let's move on to this guy, James Justin. What are we saying?
Okay, this is an interesting one. Just quickly, Brad's gone for an 8. Brad, if you want to link, mate, and you want to join, we're supposed to have Anne. He might be joining soon. If you want to join, mate, I'll send you a link. For JJ, this is interesting. I thought he looked a lot more comfortable on the right-hand side last night. But what I want to ask you both this is, he's not had like an outstanding, crazy blinder of a game, but he's had a few I wouldn't say he's been bad, and I wouldn't say he's been like amazing. But the question I want to have to use is, before I give him a score, is how much do you think we would be seeing of him if Doyle never got injured? Do you think he'd be like kind of like in the same situation as Connor Cody?
I think he would, personally. I think he's just I think, considering I was going to think he was going to be a player that we were going to make a mainstay in the side. Doyle's come in, took his position, but since he's come in, I think he's been pretty faultless. I give him not as good as Romanza, but I still give him an 8 out of 10. Because from what he's delivered to us, has he tore up that position? Not really, but he's not had to. He doesn't need to. But the versatility of him can play either side. At times when we were playing against, it wasn't this game, a game before, he was playing right up high on that right-hand side, joining in with the attack. I thought he did that brilliantly. I think he's been good against defenders one-on-one. I give him a good solid 8 out of 10 because, just considering how he's adapted to the role and he's not looked out of place, I'm really happy with him.
Yeah, nice shout. I'll go a 7. What about you, Anil? How do you feel?
Yeah, I would lean more on towards 7 as well, but I do see what Neil's saying. I think it's funny when you look at them. If you're comparing to Wout who we'll come on to in a second, I feel like JJ does sort of less exciting stuff, but he also seems more solid. So I can't really think of a mistake he's made this season. I think he always does what's asked of him. At the same time, I feel like maybe, to be fair, under Brendan Rodgers, at one point, JJ was one of the best fullbacks in the country, and he even had him playing as an inside centre-back at some points. Like I remember we played Leeds away, and he was absolutely phenomenal as a kind of third CB that could get forward on the overlap. So he's got that in his locker. So he's not really done that so much. Whereas I feel in like last couple of games, Fast especially has actually been amazing going forward, which is good. So I'll give him like the steady Eddie 7 out of 10. I think to answer your question, Doyle I think would be ahead of him because he prefers to have the left-footed player on that side. I think JJ, something that's underrated is he's using his left foot a lot more often now. He's clearly been told to work on it. And so he's got to be one of the players in the squad that's like can use both his feet better than others. I don't think he's like the Santi Cazorla where he was so good, Cazorla, that he didn't even know what foot he was. They literally asked him that question before and he goes, what foot are you? And he goes, yes. I'm just like, I can use both feet, right? But he's clearly making an effort on it. But at the same time, he's not like whipping in like a left-footed strike or something like that. So I think 7 out of 10 is what I would give him. I think what's interesting is that if Doyle was then not injured, he'd be competing without Fast on the other side, and Fast has probably got ahead of him. But I think he's steady, good performance. Be interesting to see what we do with him, because as you say, Neil, like I think the way that we're playing, I mean, he could constantly rotate him. He's definitely done well since he's come into the side. But what is the future? Because JJ, with his age, he might be thinking like, he might still have aspirations of becoming a full-time England international, and he might want to play at a team where he's first choice every single week and can make a stay for it. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I think 7 out of 10 for him. So let's move on to Sideshow Bob himself. So what do you think of the Wout star?
Go on, Luke, you go first.
Me? Okay.
Yeah.
For me, last night, I thought he was man of the match. I know you could give a shout for Daka and won't go too much in last night's game, but for me, Wout Faes was integral. He was on the opposite side last night. Anil, we spoke about this. I think he's really crucial. And if you want to quickly go back to JJ, it's like you said, he's been about a 7, maybe an 8, but you notice him missing a lot more when he doesn't play. Then you're forced to play Wout Faze on the other side, and I think we lack a lot of pace, and that's why you need Faze on if JJ is not on. He will take those driving runs forward. I think he's excellent, and he's always kind of done that, even a little bit under Rodgers, but he'd make those scary runs forward thinking he was a striker. But for me this year, he's been excellent. He brings that physicality. He takes the ball forward. He fits how we play perfectly in the back three.
So what score would you give him?
For me, a 9, mate.
How about you, Neil? What do you think of Wout Faze?
I think he's I think he's been very good. I'd say him similar. I'd probably give him another 8 out of 10. I think he's been integral to how we want to play. I think there is still a mistake in his game, which is I think we can afford him to have mistakes in his game because A, our defense is so solid, and B, the way we want to play, he has to break out from the back at times. He has to make those marauding runs forward because the opponent goes, I don't know what to do here. So I give him a 7 out of 10 because I think it's 7, 8 out of 10, I would say.
Okay. I guess I'll be the deal breaker. That seems to be my role here. I think I would agree with Neil here again. I would give him 8. I think you could actually make the argument for it being 8.5 or 9. I do agree with you, Luke. Yesterday, I thought it was absolutely phenomenal. I was jokingly saying to some people, is that Wout Faze or James Maddison playing in that position? Like, he's all over the pitch. He was twinkle-toesing his way through. And I think, we mentioned him to James Justin. I think that's the difference, is like the ceiling, the potential of Wout is incredible. Like, I feel like he could, if he didn't make mistakes, he could genuinely be elite. Like, on the ball, he is fantastic. I feel like he could even maybe step in and be like, it's so funny because he both looks like and plays a lot like David Luiz, the old Chelsea player, if you remember him from Brazil as well, who people forget that he made a mistake on him, but technically it was absolutely phenomenal. So I feel like he's got that to him. But I do agree, he does sometimes look like, I remember earlier on in the season, it wasn't given, but he gave away what should have been like a stonewall penalty. He's done like a few things where he gets beaten, so he's got that aspect. And we do know when he's been in the Premier League, that, do you remember, like when he first came in, he actually made the difference, and we had like 5 clean sheets in a row. But then he had that nightmare game against Liverpool where he scored 2 own goals and it kind of went against him. But I think he's one of those that at the start of the season he was probably a 7. I think the last couple of games he's probably been a 9. So that's why I think we should average him out as 8. But he could develop and get better and better. And I think he's at the moment, worthy of his position there. So let's move on to someone who's a bit of an interesting one, Mr. Cody. What do we think? It's your favourite player, Luke, so I think you should kick it off with him.
I feel bad for him, to be honest with you. We all felt so positive when we first signed him. He was travelling away to these games. He thought he wasn't available. We all thought he was going to be captain. For me, he hasn't been given a consistent run of games to really dissect about how he is. But I will say this, though, that the games he has played, it doesn't look as... It looks a bit more disjointed as a back three. I can't really... I know that might sound harsh. I'm not blaming him. But it doesn't sync as well for me as it does with Vestergaard, JJ, and Faze.
What score would you give him?
I feel kind of harsh for this. I would have to say 6.
Yeah. How about you, Neil?
When Luke was talking, I agree with what Luke said. I think there's two words that sum up Connor Cody, and it's Gökhan Inler. It's very, very similar situation. We all thought he was going to come into the team, become the leader of the squad, become the captain of the squad, and he's been displaced by a person that's come out of nowhere, wanting again to go to Kante for Gökhan Inler, and which nobody expected, and then in this case Yannick Vestergaard, and it's not his fault, but it's just a side effect of how good Yannick's been, how he's developed in the team with the injury to Cody. Defensively, we've looked strong. When he's come in, he's played on the right, which I don't think is his best position. But we've kind of had to shoehorn him into the team just to kind of make sure that we've got him in the team and we keep him kind of a little bit happy. I've not seen enough of him, but I would give him a 5. But I don't mean that in a bad way, just because I've not seen him in his prime position.
Yeah, that's fairly... I saw Brad was fairly savage and gave him a 4 there, which is pretty interesting. For me, I would agree with Luke. I would give him a 6. But it's your channel, Luke, so I think you should make the final call on this. I think, firstly, he's been injured. So I think it's harsh to sort of blame someone would have been injured, like to give them. In the games that he's been in, he's not been spectacular. He's not been terrible. He's been okay.
Apart
Nothing
from
more.
Liverpool, he was
Perhaps,
great.
but yeah, so there you go. That's actually quite a good thing. I mean, that was a very hard game to play. I mean, we ultimately still lost, but he was good in that game, to be fair. So I'm going to put 6 here, but feel free to override me if you want.
No, mate, I agree with you, and I agree with Neil as well. He's never going to get that. He would probably look better in that central role, but he's never going to get it because he's on the ball. He's nowhere near the same level as Yannick Vestergaard. So that's another
there
thing
might be a bit of spoilers here of what's coming next, but okay, there we go. The Gökhan Inler one is good though. That's a really, really good analogy. Actually, you're right. I remember that season where he was expected to be like the new Cambiasso
replacement.
And I don't think he even played more than like 5 times or something like that. And yeah, N'Golo Kante, thank God Steve Walsh, the scout, picked him up. Okay, let's move on. Callum Doyle. Go on, Neil, because you're the one that looks like you're going to make the most controversial statement with that sound effect you've just added. So let's get the hot take first.
I think he was built. It's a really weird one because if he would have kept playing, I would have put him towards like 9.5. But because he got injured, this is where I'm like, But my God, is there a good player in there? He's a fantastic player, and how calm he is, kind of like Hermansen for his age. How calm he is on the ball.
He's 19 years old, by the way. I don't think we should forget that. Yeah,
but he doesn't play like a 19-year-old. He plays like 25. You know, like he reminds me kind of a James Justin age kind of player, the way he plays, the way he moves. But he offers something different, James Justin. His balls in, I think it was against Rotherham, not the recent game, the previous game. The balls in that he was playing were sublime. Looking at some of the movement he was making, looking he's giving that position for freedom. There was another game, I think, that he had a bit of a stinker. The back three had a bit of a stinker. It was at home. I can't remember. And he gave the ball away.
Where the ball came off him? Yeah, and it was a bit unfortunate one. Although that was really harsh. It wasn't like, but yeah, what happened is they put Rory Delap, they targeted him all game, and it seemed like a bit of a weakness early in the season in order that you could get a little bit of joy out of him against Leicester.
Yeah, so I think he's been I think 7 out of 10 would be fair to say, just because, and that's nothing against him, just because we've not seen him.
Luke?
I actually have to agree pretty much with nearly everything that Neil just said, although I feel like I haven't seen enough of him to be able to give a fair assessment, but I don't think he was like night and day different between him and JJ from what I've seen, to be honest with you. I think JJ tracks back a lot better than Doyle does, but again, I haven't seen enough of him, and he is only 19, so I also think that he would develop a lot faster than other teams under Enzo. So I am excited to see him come back, but I don't want to see him get rushed back in. And I would hope that JJ doesn't get completely frozen out when he does.
I see Brad Guardiola there giving him 3 out of 10. He's a proper savage man, is Brad. He's not gonna. No. He's got no room for complacency. He doesn't care if he gets injured or not. I would agree with both of you. I would give him the 7. I feel like he was. If he'd played the whole way through, I expected to be a much higher rating. Otherwise, I'd give him the same as JJ. Very unfortunate to get injured. Not his fault. I think he was impressive when he was in the team. I will say one thing. I think he's a bit slow comparatively, which is why I think maybe teams would target him. And that's something people, because I would say that since JJ came in defensively, I think it helped us. But I think from an offensive phase, it doesn't, because you're right, like his distribution, and like there was a goal or a lot of times, I remember for Casey McAteer, who got a winner where Callum Doyle did the switch pass to Casey McAteer. That was against Rotherham, and he chested it down and he put it in, and that was a fantastic pass. And he really contributes a lot to going to the attack. So for me, I would still make him a permanent signing, assuming that the injury isn't too bad. You always got to be a bit careful with that, right? Because what happens if it's like, a persistent injury, you don't want another player that's made of glass. But hey, Enzo seems to have that about him, right? He's managed to get a tune out of both JJ and Ricardo, who are playing frequently, which I think is really important. So we've got 2 more in the defensive phase. The next one we're going to move on to is this man, Ricky P. I think I'll take this away. You can take it in turns as to who leads it. For me, a very high rating. I'm going to give him 9 out of 10. I think there's an argument that you could be even higher than that. I think he has been phenomenal this season. And what's really interesting is he's been phenomenal in ways that we didn't expect. So he's playing one of the most complicated roles in football, which is the inverted fullback. Don't know if you guys saw Liverpool versus Arsenal yesterday, but that was interesting because you had both Zinchenko and Alexander-Arnold playing as inverted players for their teams respectively. And you can see just like in the modern day how that player gets challenged. But Ricky does so well. Like, I think his ability to play under tight pressure or in traffic, as Enzo would say, is great. Teams were targeting him early on in the season, him and Harry Winks, to try and like disrupt them to get the ball and maybe cause some pressure. But as the season's gone on, he's got better and better at dealing with the pressure. And I think something that's underrated is we did this against Rotherham, we did this against Millwall, we did this against Preston, is that teams that park the bus and put 5 at the back, what Enzo does is he puts another man forward to give us a numerical superiority in the attacking build-up phase of the game. And Ricky's the player that he puts up there. So Ricardo, sometimes he's playing as a right back, sometimes he's playing as a left back, sometimes he's playing as the CDM. That's what most of his time is. But sometimes he's even playing as an attacking midfielder. He's making attack challenges. He's able to receive the ball and play it out of pressure. He's assisting. He's scored recently. He's doing it all. And when's the last time that Ricky P played so many games for us without getting injured?
Don't
Unbelievable.
Oh,
no, but
it's a good point.
I don't think we have, because I actually think
Yeah.
that the way that Maresca's using him, I think is quite clever, because I have a feeling the reason he was getting injured is that when you play the fullback position, it's a very explosive position because you've got to go from a standing still to accelerating really fast all the time. It's not a surprise that many players, when they get older, they drop them back in their position. Or, for example, Paolo Maldini is one of my favorite players of all time, one of the greatest players of all time. But he started as a left back who is explosive at AC Milan. And when they won their first European Cups, he played at left back. But when they won their second batch of European Cups, they moved him to left centre back, where he's playing alongside Alessandro Nesta. And it's in that position, he could take his time, he didn't have to rush, and he could use his mental power. Same as Andrea Pirlo got dropped back to be like a, regista for that same team, and the Italian team was amazing. So I think there's something to be said there. So I would give him a 9, but I don't want to steal all the thunder. What do you reckon, Luke?
Oh, I'm going to have to go a 9 as well. I think he's been absolutely integral, and you would notice him a lot more. You'd miss him a lot. I think him and Winks. I'm still here.
Yeah.
Oh, you not hear me?
Okay, mine might be lagging then. Never mind.
Oh, okay, sorry. I think that we would miss him a lot, him and Winks, if he were to get injured. And touch wood for after what Neil said, it has been excellent to see him get a consistent run of games. And credit to Enzo. And for me, he's been like beyond a utility player, and I think he should just be given permanently the captain's armband. I also think Ricky P almost feels like he has like an extra second than any other player. He's always calm on the ball. He always picks out his pass perfectly. He offers so much. For me, strong 9.
I thought you were going to say he should be given the keys to the city there at some point. You're like such a fan of Ricky P.
I love Ricky P, mate. I'm just stoked that he's back. I'm just surprised that we hung on to him, but I think with the length of his contract, I think him and JJ both signed at the same time. Roughly, they extended their contracts, and with his injury record, I honestly expected both of them, JJ and Ricky P, to not stay, but they did. So credit to Ricky P. Just make him permanent captain.
And how about you, Neil? What would you give him?
Yeah, I can't really disagree. I think 9.5, because he's how pivotal he's been to that role, and especially as you were mentioning, how technical you need to be for that role from a defensive point of view, from an objective point of view, how he goes and attacks the ball. Also, a couple of things, that you mentioned. The fact that he is such a good player off the ball, as well as on the ball.
We didn't mention that. That deserves a lot of praise. Does deserve a lot of praise.
His positional awareness is fantastic. His ability going forward to pick up a place and also to deliver a cross. I think his crossing delivery is really underrated as well. And he's thriving, I think, in that captaincy role. We've seen people go into their shell before, more experienced players or players that have been around the team, and they've gone, I can't handle this. But now, all of a sudden, he's coming into that role, and it doesn't faze him the fact that he's got the captaincy armband. There are a couple of things I wanted to pick out, because everybody knows how good he is defensively. Him playing that right back role, him playing the inverted wing role, him playing Enzo. You go forward and play as in the middle of the midfield. He goes, yeah, no problem. So easy all day. So I think he's been. At the end of the season, when we do the full season review, my God, it's going to be so hard to choose because there's going to be so many players, and we could sit there for hours talking about why this player is better, is deserving of this player. The only reason why I don't like doing them is because you end up negating other players and saying why they're not good enough, but they've all been phenomenal. And Ricky P is probably one of those players that stands out for me.
Absolutely. I love how I really think Brad is Guardiola because he's given him 9.5, and you can tell he doesn't suffer fools. He doesn't care about injuries, but inverted fullbacks, he's clearly like, he loves inverted fullbacks. So we've given him a 9. I think there's a strong argument to be higher than that. I think just you got to be like, we have actually lost some games and dropped some points. That's what I suppose, 10 is perfection, but some players might get close to that. Spoilers, we'll get to that. But Ricardo, absolutely fantastic. So now onto someone who I feel you could make an entire episode on. It's Yannick the Panic, or is he? Vestergaard. So I tell you what, why don't you take this away, Neil? Give us a little description as him.
Oh, what do you say about him? I mean, at the beginning, I was like, well, wait till Conor Cody comes back. He's only like a lot of this squad, he's grown into the team. And a player that was on the fringes, now coming in, now not just playing as a centre-back, but at the beginning of the season, his distribution wasn't quite there. He wasn't as comfortable. Now he knows what he's doing. He's spraying balls, and people talk about Harry Winks spraying balls. Yannick Vestergaard might be up there in percentages with Harry Winks from the beginning because he's that good at playing the balls out from the back. It's not always just a quick 2-1 Harry Winks, which is I thought they'd do a lot more. 1-2, then break from Harry Winks. Harry Winks isn't actually getting that. Again, he's off the ball. We'll get into him a bit later, but the way he positions himself, the positions he takes up, and also what we've seen recently, his ability to win headers, his ability to be threatening in the opposition's box is something we've not seen before as well. So I'm thoroughly impressed with him and probably will give him the same rating as Ricardo, even though on paper, I don't think he's as technically good as Ricardo. Just a phenomenal player.
What are you giving him out of 10? 9?
9.
9. How about you, Luke?
9.
What are you giving our mate Yannick?
I'm not going to get as crazy as Brad here. I think
I got
to
be honest with you. I'm more on Team Brad here. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I would go 9.5 because I think something you got to take into consideration is that think about the mental fortitude of you being absolutely buried. You've been asked to train with the reserves. Everyone's using you as a scapegoat. I saw so many people last season who are like, what's this guy's problem? Look, just accept it. It hasn't worked out at Leicester. Just move on so we can sign more players. It's your fault kind of thing, even though you've never really been given the chance. So you're public enemy number one. You're put into the team. I remember I was there on the first game of the season and people were really like, they wanted to get their knives out for Yannick. Although at the end of the game, people were like, well, to be fair, it was all right. So we'll give him a pass kind of thing. He's done everything that could be asked of him. But I don't want to steal your thunder. Let's hear from you, Luke.
No, not at all, mate. I agree with Kate here. And look, for me, I give him a 9. I agree with you 100% of the mental fortitude. I think it's absolutely excellent for him. And he was, let's remind ourselves here, he was a panic buy, I believe, when Fofana got injured, I think. So we paid too much for him. So it's not his fault that no one was going to match his wages. Kept his head down, similar to Daka. In fact, much more intense than what Daka had to go through, than what Daka's gone through. So I think he's absolutely vital for our ball distribution, playing it out from the back. And sometimes like last night, for instance, right, he a bit similar to Harry Winks, kind of flies under the radar. You don't appreciate how much he really does for the team. And if he was gone, then you would notice. But credit to Yannick Vestergaard, I will give him a 9. He still does scare me a little bit, like with his pace, like if we get hit in the counter. But fortunately, that hasn't happened so much. But that is an asterisk and another conversation to have if he does resign once we go back to the Premier League.
Cool.
But we'll cross
All
that
right,
bridge
let's
later.
give him 9. I think he deserves higher, but I think 9 is still pretty good. You're going to take.
Are we
that
doing
all day,
0.5s or are we just doing whole
well,
numbers?
it's Luke's channel, so you get the final say. You can veto anyone.
Mate. We can do halves. I've always pushed for halves. So
I mean, you could be
I'm
more
happy.
controversial. You could be like 9.213 if you wanted to. You could, absolutely. It's your channel, your rules.
I'm going to give him 9.5, mate.
Okay, 9.5 it is. All right, this one will be a funny one. You've got to lead it on this one because this is definitely Luke's favourite player in the squad.
Ugh.
The Italian stallion. Oh, listen to that. Oh my
I can't slag him off after last night, can
on
I?
YouTube Shorts, please. I beg you. That is Cesare Casadei. Take it away, Luke.
Okay, look, to be fair, he looked other than his tap-in flying header last night, right? That kamikaze header. He actually did look a little more positive, but I don't like moaning about people in the team, but I am going to moan a little bit, actually. Yes, credit to Cesar, whatever you want to call him. Let's just call him Maresca's nephew. He's a bit slow for me, and like sometimes he just looks lost and confused, like a headless chicken. He looked a lot more positive last night. Don't get me wrong, and he does make those runs into the box. But I actually agree 100%. Like, this is going to sound stupid because he had half a decent game when he come on yesterday. But for me, like you said, Anil, on Beyond the 90, why are we developing him? He's not going to play for Chelsea. We might sign him, we might not. But why are we developing him if we're not going to sign him when we could be playing people like Pratt, who I think is a better option when it comes to January? So it's going to be interesting what happens once Wilfred and Ndidi goes. We're going to stick with Cassidy or Pratt. But for me, I'm going to give him a 5.
Okay. That's actually way higher than I was expecting from you, Luke. I wouldn't be surprised if you went lower than that. What are you saying, Neil?
I think he's been 5 as well. I think he's had some good moments. I don't think off the ball. There's a couple of games where it's like, yeah, he's starting to build into it, but he's not kept up a consistent run of form to keep him in the team. Enzo likes to do this, where if you keep playing, like Daka and Vestergaard are great examples of this, where if you keep performing, I'm going to keep you in the team. But it also works great where the likes of Cassidy doesn't come out of the team, doesn't get in the team because he's not worthwhile. We've seen with previous managers or even Brendan, for example, where a player that he likes will get game time, even though he's not as good as a guy on the bench. Here we're seeing the opposite way around. Even though Cassidy's he's not performed to the level, Enzo was very vocal from about a month into him getting the job that he wanted Cassidy and he wanted him to be part of this team. We all thought he'd start. However, 5 out of 10. I'm not too bothered. It'll be interesting to see if he gets more game time with Ndidi out of the team as well. But also, who other will play in that position? Obviously, you've got Yunus that could play there, Pratt that could play there as well. It'll be interesting to see how much game time he gets with Ndidi going to AFCON.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would go 5 out of 10 as well then. I think that's a more than fair rating for him. I think you do obviously raise some interesting points there. Like we've said before, like if we're not going to, he's not our player, why are we developing? But I have to say, the last few games, I have a feeling we are going to sign him. I don't think it's going to be I don't think it's going to be an extortionate amount of money. I think he could be like decent. Like I can see a player there. I would agree that the thing I think I was saying on to a lot of people about this guy is that because we were chasing him all summer, the effort that we put into him, it made it feel like he was going to be the difference. Like he was going to be such an integral part of this way that we wanted to play that we absolutely had to have this player. And that if we didn't, we would be in big trouble. Whereas if you think about some other people or other signings, so Hermansen was signed pretty stress-free. We just signed him and he's been pivotal to the way that we played. Harry Winks, no fuss. Signs comes in, pivotal to the way that we play. Steffi Mavadidi, great player, no fuss. Even for Towell, there was a little bit of stress with him, but it kind of felt like it was getting done and they were just working out the details. Cassidy, there was his like, will he, won't he? Oh, he's too good for us. All the Italian teams want us. He's too good for little old Leicester and League, the Championship. So when he turned up, seeing him being like 5 out of 10 is an average player, it's a bit odd, isn't it? But there you go. But I've got a feeling that there you go. Someone's put that. I got a feeling we will sign him for roughly that amount of money. We'll see that. Or they might loan him to us again for another season. We'll see. Look, I got to say, I'm not too bothered if he does or he doesn't sign. He's definitely not making the difference. But it's just an average player, I would say. So no harm, no foul. But I've got a feeling he's going to be the lowest scoring player of this chart. But let's see. I don't want to speak for everyone. So let's move on. Go on then.
Sorry, quickly. I have to add this in.
Yeah.
Let's say if we get promoted, touch wood,
Yeah.
I think he's too slow for the Premier League.
Well, maybe, but I think, let's not judge that until someone gets there. Like, there's been plenty of players. Like, I would just remind you, in the Premier League right now, who is the second top scorer? There's a little pop quiz for you. Do you know who it is? It's
No
Dominic
idea.
Solanke of Bournemouth. And he is a player that's been memed on. That's the most amazing hat I've seen, by the way. Neil's repping it there.
I completely forgot about it. That it fell on the floor, and I was like, "Oh, I've got to put it in."
Yeah, my point is that Solanke is like tearing it up for Bournemouth right now. And he was someone that was absolutely clowned on earlier in his career. And people can change and improve over time. Like Jamie Vardy didn't have a particularly great first season for Leicester when he first signed. A lot of people thought that he was overrated and why have we spent that much money on a non-league striker? David Nugent was the one that was going to take us back to the promised land. But then, the rest, as they say, is history. So look, I'm not going to be the Casate defense force or anything like that. But I'd say let's make that judgment when we get there. You never know. Some players in certain systems can improve or look very different. And that's going to lead us very nicely into this lad. Our next one, I'll take this way. Harry Winks. For me, 9.5. And I would be tempted to give him even higher than that. I think he's only played one bad game this season, which was against Leeds. He wasn't the only one to have a bad game there, where I felt they targeted him and they did a good job on him. But otherwise, this guy has been absolutely phenomenal. On the ball, brilliant. Never in trouble. There was one game where he had 100% pass completion, even though he made 83 passes. I believe that was against Southampton. And it wasn't like all those passes were sideways and back. Quite often, Harry Winks is making that killer cutting pass that finds one of our wingers or eights. And it's not quite the assist, but it's the pre-assist. And for me, and why he's a strong contender for our player of the season, is not only has he been fantastic in everything he's asked to do, but he has scored 2 goals, and both those goals were winners, and they were clutch winners. So one was against QPR with a fantastic strike. The crowd was saying, shoot. He did shoot, didn't he? And he absolutely buried it. Fantastic strike. And then against West Brom, they committed too many men forward. He's one of our 6s. Normally, at that stage in the game, you would say, look, we'll take the draw. Don't do anything stupid. You don't need to get out position. No, he was running like a man possessed to keep up with KDH, squared it to him. The ball wasn't even the best. He had to kind of slide on the floor to get it in, and he put it away for a 2-1. And I think more than anything, all the fans will say this, he resonates with the fans massively. Mm-hmm. The way that he gets involved, he comes up to the fans and he loves it. You can tell this is someone who must have had like a lot of personal grief themselves, probably didn't have the best time at Spurs or Sampdoria. He's found his home, I think. And I think you're looking at someone who's probably going to be with us for 5 to 6 years. He's already become a fan's favourite. And I would give this guy 9.5. What do you think, Luke?
Okay. No matter what score Neil gives, I'm going to have to override. I'm going to give him 11. I'm going to take the piss. Okay. For me, signing of the season, player of the season, and also I will find it somewhere probably later and I'll send it to you, Neil. But I'm almost positive, unless I'm imagining this, that he came out with a quote when he first signed. And he said that like he's always just wanted to be loved and appreciated sort of thing. And he wanted to like feel like, a sense of belonging. And like that just goes perfectly with what you just said. He's got that here. You can feel it, that he wants to be here.
Neil, how do you top 11 out of 10?
Well, I was going to go 10 for the reason which sounds
he's absolutely integral in this.
But the reason why I was going to say 10 out of 10 is what more could he have done in that side? And the answer is not really anything. So that's why I'd give him perfect score, which I'm very hard to do because you have to be, and he's been unbelievable for us. I don't really have anything to really fault that you guys haven't mentioned already.
Well, great praise for Harry then. Let's leave him with 11. It's Luke's channel. Looks like player of the season. All right, let's move on to Sharky. Mark Albrighton. Not made the most amount of appearances, so perhaps this one's not really worth it. Maybe I should have. I had a section actually for kind of like bit part players, but let's do him anyway. What would you say, Neil, for old Sharky? No worries.
It's all right. I think 5. Actually, I'd give him better. I'd give him a 6.5 out of 10.
Wow, 6.5. Fair enough.
Because when he's come in, I think his work this season, he's not put up a fuss. He was obviously loaned out last season. You could say a similar thing here. He's come in, and I think it was, what game was it? Was it Plymouth? Where we were 4-0 up or 3-0 up, and came in and he goes, okay, game settled now. He was the best substitute to come on out of all the substitutes. He worked the hardest. He was creating opportunity. He megged the player and went round him. Like, who's this player? But again, it shows you that even at his age, he's still developing into a better player. He knows he's not going to play every week. He knows he's not going to be on the bench. When he comes in, he gives you that solid traditional mark or rise and roll, which is effort, which is work rate. You can kind of put him in at different places. And I think for that, I'd give him a 6.5. But just because, but the only, that's it, when he's come on, but is he 1.5 better than kind of Cody? This is where I'm talking about now.
Yeah, or Casadei. Yeah. Well, look, I tell you what, Luke, you can be the arbiter for this. What score would you give him?
I actually have to agree with Neil. I think every time he's been called upon, he's done a job and he's done it well. I think 6.5 is fair, considering how much I've seen him.
Yeah, all right, that's fair enough. Let's move on. Okay, let's go on for this one. Well, Neil's got to take this one away. One of his favourite players in a Leicester shirt.
This is my guy. This is Hamza. Come on. I think the fact that he signed a contract this season, I think that he was again on the fringes. I think he was. I'm always a massive fan of him because what he does, what he comes in. I think this season especially with what he's delivered. At times he looked a bit shaky, but I think the majority of the time I'll give him a 7 out of 10 for what he's given on the pitch. Oh, but he's good as JJ. That's the only thing, 7 out of 10 as well. Yeah, I'd give him a 7 out of 10 for what he's given to the team. And not just that, from the defensive point of view, I think people have mentioned it before where he can play the inverted fullback. Granted, not as good as somebody like Ricardo, but playing in that position. He's also been really good later on in the games where the team is tired at winning the ball up really high up in the pitch, giving it, then giving it short. Kind of like pressing the game, winning the ball, then giving the pass over to somebody like the pre-assist, as you were mentioning for Harry Winks earlier. So yeah, I give him a 7 out of 10. I think I think he's a good player, and I think some people don't think he's Premier League ready. I think for a Premier League squad, I still think the reason why I signed the contract, I think he's going to be a guy that we can rely on to rotate for in replacement of the likes of Ricardo Pereira. He could probably play in the back three if he needs to. He can. I wouldn't say he's a number 8, but he can play up there if he needs to as well.
I've got to say I'm on Team Scott there. I would give him a bit of a higher rating, but what do you reckon, Luke?
Oh, this is going to be controversial. I'd give him 6.5.
What? Wow. Okay.
I think on the ball, he's not as obviously reliable, the same quality as Ricardo. There's been games where I think he's been harshly criticised for his ball distribution. He's been not that bad, but I don't think he's been amazing either. And I don't think I think he's a squad player in Premier League at best. To be honest,
well, but we're not in the Premier League yet. We're in the Championship.
I know. I'm thinking far ahead.
Yeah.
But I think 6.5.
All right, a 7. It's your channel. I gotta say, I would give him.
What do you think, Anu?
I would give it a 8 or even 8.5 for me. I'm surprised you're watching the same player that I am. Like this guy in one of the games that Harry Winks was suspended, Hamza came in and you didn't notice anything. He did everything he was asked to do. Every time he comes on, he makes a difference. He's played the inverted fullback role. He's played just as a straight out and out CDM. He's good on the ball. The only time I can think where he made a mistake, and I don't even think it was that much of a mistake, is against Middlesbrough. He put in a rash challenge. They got a free kick and they scored a phenomenal free kick to win them the game. But that was a bit unlucky. And, the ball went loose because Vestergaard made a mistake. So
that's the thing. And everybody had to go at Chowdhury for that. And for me, I was like, well, if you look at the patch of the game, Vestergaard put that ball wrong. So Hamza, if he didn't put that challenge in, they're through on goal.
Yeah, so for me, I personally would just say that every time he's been called upon, he's been great. He's not let anyone down, and he's done more than that. He's made a good positive contribution. But I'll go with this. It's okay. It can be.
No, mate. No, I don't mean to be negative, and I agree with you. He has done a job, but I think that we're much more appreciative of that for that reason. Whereas if he was playing consistently week in, week out, I do not think would be giving him an 8. No way. That's my
Fair.
personal opinion, though, and I'm Australian, so I could be
There you go. There you
giving
go. Fair
stupid
enough.
knowledge.
Fair enough. All right, let's move on to a very strong player here. Why don't you take this one away, Luke? Tell us about this fella.
I love Dewsbury Hall. And he can be frustrating as well because he does like so much half. He gets half of it so much right, and then sometimes he can have a bad first touch or his pass can be a bit off. Also, I wish we were talking about earlier about, you're saying JJ's been using his left foot a lot more, and he's clearly been working on it. I've been saying this for a while. I personally would love to see Dewsbury Hall. Granted, he hasn't been that bad recently, but use his right foot a lot more. He turns a lot, looks for it, and sometimes puts himself in trouble. But his ball carrying ability is absolutely phenomenal. And I'm pretty sure there was a stat last season in Premier League that he covered the most ground with the ball. I think he's excellent. Obviously, a Leicester lad, very passionate. I think he's been on fire it wasn't his greatest game against Rotherham last night, but I thought he'd been on fire for the month before that. But for me, I'm going to have to go at 8.5 for Keenan Dewsbury Hall.
I just want to bring this up in terms of stats. This is
zoom in
Keenan
on that?
Dewsbury Hall. Yeah, I will. Let me see if I can bring this. Let me see. Can you see this? I'm specifically talking about the pie chart. So this is him in terms of percentages. And what you're seeing here is that he is in the top 1% or top 2% for 5 different stats, all of which are attacking. In terms of possession, he's on top of 3, and he's in a high one for this. So what I would basically say to you is that there's no player in the championship that has a better rating overall than this particular guy. Of course, stats can be misleading. Stats can be used to prove everything. Anything. 83% of people know that. But just thought I would. But what do you reckon, Neil?
9.5. Just how good he's been. Could he have done much better? Because again, with like Harry Winks, if you're looking at 10 out of 10, I think he's found a system that's worked for him. And also, he's locked down that position, not just for this, but even against the likes of Liverpool when we substituted, because I think Cassidy and Yunus started the number 8s. When Ndidi, we'll get on to probably later, and KDH came into that midfield role. The gate they picked up, they owned that midfield. I think he's doing everything. He's getting header goals, he's scoring. I mean, even at the moment, just from a stat perspective, you look at some of his stats around top goal scorer, the joint top goal scorer with Mavididi and Jamie Vardy, 9 assists already. If we
I was going to say 7 goals, 9 assists.
It's ridiculous. Like if he ends the season, because we're about halfway through, 14 goals and 18 assists. That is an unbelievable amount of number. He can a little bit of times get the game, I won't say passing by. He does sometimes decision making isn't quite there, but I'd still give him a 9.5 because he's been sensational at this level. And I think, like a lot of players, he's really enjoying this new role in the team. Before, if you remember, he was playing alongside Yuri Tillemans and then joining into the box late. I think he's really thriving in that position. My only issue is, at times, I do feel like he needs to he's one of the number 8s that needs to get into the box to finish it off. But I know that's not quite what Enzo has in mind for him.
Well, what are you going to say, Luke? I would agree with Neil. I'd have to give him 9.5. I think he is literally, statistically, he's the best player in the division. There's no even denying that. He's consistent. I agree that he could be even better. That for me is the scary thing. That's why in the summer when he was linked with Liverpool, I think it made perfect sense. Because when I see them play, I could 100% see him playing for Liverpool. He fits the Klopp mold so well. He's got the engine, he's got the determination, he's got the all-round game. Yeah, he's definitely one of the best players. But it's your channel, so what rating are you going to give him to put him on?
I tend to agree now. Now I feel guilty for giving him an 8.5. I think 9.5 is fair actually. Now, especially when you bring the stats up, I'll leave it there.
Well, the thing is, I think you've got constructive criticism there, which is fair. Because I will say about KDH is even though he's that good, he's a player that in this division you could argue that he should be 10. Like he should be even more stats because he's so good. But I think Neil summed it up there. Like he's doing things that I hadn't seen him before. Like look against Birmingham where he made that amazing counter attack and he went round the keeper. He's heading goals in. He's assisting. He's crossing. Enzo at the beginning of the season said, look, Kiernan, all your statistics are great, but for whatever reason, your goal contributions aren't good enough for a player of your talent. Well, at the moment, he's got 7 goals and 9 assists. You won't find many people in the division that have got more goal contributions than that. So I think he's even living up to the billing of what's been asked for. And I think for that reason, you would struggle not to give him. Like, trust me, I think if there's one player that you could ask any team in this division if they could sign from Leicester who they would have, I think that they would choose this guy over Harry Winks, even though they don't maybe see every game that we play. All right, who wants to take it away for a man who's been absolutely reborn this season? Wilfred.
Let's let Neil.
Wilfred indeed will give the ball to.
You know what?
Sorry.
I'm gonna. Luke's passed it to me. I'm gonna pass it back to you, Anil. What do you think of him?
I will give Wilfred an 8.5 out of 10. I've been blown away by his revelation in this position. I think a lot of us thought he was going to leave the club in the summer. That was the expectation. And most of us thought it was the right decision. Like, he'd been a great servant for us, had some amazing seasons, but completely fallen off due to injuries and some personal crisis. And it was time for a change of scenery and, you know, for him to enjoy his football elsewhere. That was the feeling from everyone. And that he was a bit of one of the reasons why we went down last season. Then when we started seeing some of the pre-season friendlies, I remember you and I, Neil, talking about, is he trying to turn Wilfred Ndidi into some sort of attacking midfielder? And we thought, nah, he's probably just doing that because we haven't signed Cassidy yet. And, you know, he's just being nice to him and he'll get moved on. And, you know, it's just an experiment. And it looked kind of good, but let's get real. Wilfred Ndidi is an attacking midfielder. Never going to happen in a month of Sundays. Well, it turns out it is going to happen. He's been put into that position and he's done amazing. And I think that he has been great for many things. He's scored goals. He's assisted. He got another assist yesterday. Maybe it's a bit of a lucky assist because basically he tried to score a goal. It ricocheted off and it went to Daka, who put it in. But still, that is an assist. But he's made those beautiful crosses where he's played into the pocket, got to the byline and dinked the cross over his right and his left foot. He's doing great. And the biggest thing I can say about Wilfred Ndidi, which I think is why you could even rate him higher than what I've given him, is that of all the players in the team, funnily enough, it seems to be then when Wilfred's been out of the team, Leicester have played their worst. I don't know if you've noticed that, but Wilf picked up a bit of an injury. He came out of the team. We put Cassidy in and we looked a lot weaker because what you were seeing is that Wilf was turning the ball up over high up the pitch and getting us playing. And his combination with Fatawu, it really feels like there's a big brother, little brother thing going on there. And they're like kind of best mates off the pitch. And it's worked really well. So I'll give him 8.5. I think there's argument to give him even higher than that. I think if I was going to be critical of him, I feel Wilf should have scored more goals this season. I think yesterday was another good example where in the first half, there was a bit where the ball got cut back to him and he crossed it to the far post for Mavadidi, who ended up kicking it out of the stadium. What a bad finish that was. But I feel like in that position, I would have gone for goal, and I'm surprised that he didn't. He's also been played one-on-one in a few times, and he's not scored. And I feel like he'd be working the keeper a bit better than he has. So I think he could have got a few more goals, and that'd be even better. But I still think he's been great. I'm loving the reinvention of him. I actually think it's funny. A lot of people think that they don't see him in this position in the Premier League. But I've got a feeling he might be even better in the Premier League in this position than he is now. And I think the reason for that is a lot more teams play more pressing football. They don't just sit back, parking the bus. And I think you're going to see that Wilf's ability to win the ball high up the pitch turns it over a bit. I think this is actually similar to Kante. Like, people used to say Kante's a CDM, but that's not really true. When we played, you know, we actually formed a compact block, but it wasn't always a low block. It was actually, we played quite high up the pitch. So we played the offside trap, and his role was just to win the ball back as fast as possible. And if you turn the ball over and then the one pass goes straight to Vardy or two passes goes to Vardy, it means your defense into attack is really quick and it makes a big difference. So, you know, I've said a lot, but I would give him easily an 8.5. I think you could make the argument for more than that. But yeah, fantastic. So who wants to take it next and then argue with me?
I think he's higher than that, personally. I think he's getting 9. Potentially, I think he's been fantastic this season with what he's done, how he's contributed to the team. Again, I'm trying to think of a bit. There was something else that I mentioned I was thinking about in terms of. Oh yeah, so you mentioned some really good stuff without kind of going over the same stuff that you've gone over. I think his link up on the. You mentioned Iheanacho. Fatau, I've been really impressed with. Them two have a really good relationship on that right hand side, and they're able to, for example, indeed he's making this run over to this right hand side, and Fatau's like, yeah, I know where he is, slides him in, and Wolves' chip balls have been surprisingly good as well. At times he does make the wrong decision in that opinion by putting it straight across the ball box, but he needs to put them up in the air more. However, I still think he's been phenomenal this season, and also he doesn't get as praise as much for how much he works back and helps out defensively, even though he is a more of attacking player. His defensive stats are actually pretty good as well, or not just stats, just from what I've seen in the game as well.
Yeah, I'm just bringing this up. This is like a really good thing about this site is you can compare them to players. So if you compare him to Kiernan Dewsbury Hall, so Kiernan's in the kind of pink color here, Wilfred in green, but you can see that statistically even, they're very similar in terms of profile. You can see that where KDH has got better is he's better at progressing the ball at the successful take-ons, marked difference here. Same with progressive passes, but still, this is a lot. And I think it's just, well, look, here you can see that where Wolf is better on the interceptions, quite significantly better, right? So this is what we're kind of adding here. Yeah, so just a bit interesting. What do you think, Luke?
I think 8.5 is fair. You could make an argument for 9. Brad raised an interesting point earlier as well that like he started as a centre back, he played a lot under centre back, and we had an injury crisis last season, and then up to a 6, and he's worked up to a high pressing 8. I think that he's been excellent, and I think he's going to keep getting better at that role as well. And I tend to agree with Neil. I think that this is his role now. And it's an interesting question. If we are to lose him because he's out of contract, as you know, and this obviously his property price has gone back up again, but in a new position, ironically, if someone else signs him, are they signing him as a 6 or a high pressing 8? It's an interesting question. But for me, I think we're going to miss him in January a lot. I think 8.5 is fair. And we missed him a lot. That bad patch of games we had could be a big asterisk. Was it because we're missing Wilf? And I think that's where a lot of the irritation for Cassidy for me came from.
Yeah, there you go. So actually, not necessarily Cassidy's fault, because he's showing that he's not as good as his replacement. It makes a difference. All right, let's move on to someone who's been a very exciting addition to the squad this year and a big surprise. Who wants to talk about? Maybe Neil, you can talk about Casey McAteer.
I've been really impressed with him. We're giving high, I think, across the board, but I think 8.5 would be fair for Casey. Just because coming into this season, there was obviously we knew that McAteer, Braybrook, and Alves were the 3 people breaching into the team. Now, out of the 3 of them, it looked like McAteer was going to be the one that's going to be the less likely to start. He's been a bit unfortunate with injuries, but I think he's been great. His ability to work back, track back, knock a ball past the player, but also I think his best key attribute of all the wingers is to arrive in the box and just not for a tap-in, but for a good finish at that period of time. His positional play, I think, is the best out of all the wingers we've got. So yeah, 8.5, because he's been great for considering, I don't know how young he is. I think he's 22, 23. Let me look. I think he's been great. Let's have a look. 2001.
22,
so
yeah.
22
years. Yeah.
So still on the young end, still a possibility to develop. I think he's been great as well. So it's just the only problem is because his injuries and his lack of game time. I think they're the only 2 injuries. However, Enzo knows that if you keep performing, we're going to keep you in the team. My only question is, do you think he can play on the left? Because at the moment, we've only really seen him on the right.
What do you think, Luke?
I think we did see him on the left in the preseason, I believe. I might be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I swear we have seen the left at least once. But I think 8's fair for him, providing that he's been injured for the last couple of games. But I think no one expected this. I think he's been excellent. He offers something different than Fatau. He cuts in across a lot more than Fatau, who kind of hugs the touchline and takes his man on. But I actually think that. Actually, no, that's too outlandish. I'm not going to say that. I would go an 8 for Casey McAteer.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I was just bringing up his stats here. I think what's very interesting is you can see, well, obviously he scored a lot of goals in his position, but look at his defensive contribution, clearances, tackles, blocks. interceptions. And something that Enzo says a lot is he goes, did you see Casey McAteer's off the ball contribution? It was phenomenal. And that's what he's talking about. It is true. It's like he's a real team player. And I love that. That's one thing I think is you expect from your academy players is always to die for the shirt. And he will. And I think he's very unlucky that he got injured. I think it benefited someone else who will come on into a minute. But what a revelation. I think a lot of us did expect there to be one breakout player in the team this year that was going to come from the academy. And I think you'd have got an extremely high price at the bookies if you went for Casey McAteer, because no one was talking about this guy pre-season. Mm-hmm. Right. Let's move on to this guy, the GOAT. There can be only one. It's Jamie Vardy. I guess I'll take this away. He's one of our joint top scorers, I believe. He's getting old, but you know what? Sometimes, like a fine wine, you can get better with age. I think Vardy's adapting to his new role. I thought maybe you might think he'd score more goals than what he has, given his comparative firepower in this division. But I think he's been very solid. I think I would give him probably an 8 out of 10. I think his link-up play has been better than expected. He's finished, more importantly. I have loved this shit housing of various fans in all the grounds. I think if I'm being honest, I might be adding at least 0.5 or 1 just for that alone. But that's worthwhile. He is what he is. And look, I think it says a lot that even though he's at this age, he's still clearly the first choice striker. That could be up for debate given a certain someone's recent resurgence in form. But he's doing the business. There's not too much. The only thing I could think, I forget which game it was, but I do remember there being one game where the team was again putting 5 at the back and it didn't feel like he was going to score. And he missed an absolute gilt-edged opportunity and he literally punched himself in the face. Do you remember that? And he punched himself so hard. But then it came to him like 2 minutes later. And this time he actually scored a harder opportunity. And then in the end, I think he ended up scoring twice, which I think was classic JV. So look, of course, when you're watching Jamie Vardy, there is that little bit of a sense of like, you know, he's not the player that he was. And the player that he was literally the greatest player that we've seen in our lifetimes for this club, you know, in terms of consistency and performance. But he's still really solid. And I still think he's a player that, again, if you asked any team in this division, if they could have Jamie Vardy, there's probably only Leeds who would say no. I think every other team would take him. And so for that, I think I personally would give him a solid 8 out of 10. But that's me. What are you saying, Luke?
I agree with everything you just said. It's interesting seeing him, you know, playing a lot more deep and playing more that link-up play and under Enzo. And it's interesting because we see that with all of our strikers. It's the first question I had about Patson, if he were to get minutes before he did, and as well as Tom Cannon. So for me, I reckon 8's fair, maybe 7.5. Jamie Vardy is immortal. I love him. I love his shithousery. Yeah, for me, I would probably. I don't think he can be a week in, week out player, obviously at his age anymore, and obviously now with his injuries. But I think 7.5 to 8's fair.
Neil,
I've gone a little bit more harsh. I went for like 6.5, which I agree with what you guys are saying, and I just think he's. How do I say it with Vardy? There's opportunity. Maybe it's because I've seen him at such a high level for such a period of time. We're seeing just towards the end of, as bad as it sounds, and again, his levels are still high, but comparing to what Jamie Vardy used to be, he's missing opportunities. He's not making the runs maybe he should be making. And I still think he's been fantastic, but if he was that fantastic, he'd probably continue to play. And at the moment, I know he's granted he's injured. Even with Isaksen and Daka scoring, do you see Jamie Vardy getting back into the team? And the answer is probably no. So I'd be harsh.
Vardy, the African Cup of Nations is coming up though, right? So he'll probably start regardless.
Yeah. I hear that. I'd go for 6.5 to be perfectly honest with you. That was my gut feeling when I first thought of it. Not because he's a bad player, just because again, there's something about him at the moment that it's great, but I'm looking at going, it's Jamie Vardy isn't that same player that he used to be.
Okay, that's fair. I don't think many people would argue. I've lowered it to 7. I think that's fair enough.
I think it's fair.
Let's go to the next one. Okay, here's an exciting one. A new signing from the summer. The 10 is a heavy shirt to wear. Previous incumbents have included James Maddison, Andy King. So, Steffi Mavididi. Who would like to give us their opinion on Steffi? Go on, Luke, with those eyebrow raised, it's got to be you. Yeah.
love Mavididi. When he first started, right, the first 3 games, I was like, man, this guy's a level above with his step overs, taking his man on. He tracks back. He does so much off the ball as well, if you want to talk about off the ball. Like, and that's so nice compared to what we're used to with Harvey Barnes. And then I thought he had a bit of a rough patch where he could be a bit frustrating sometimes. But then I think the last month, like 3 or 4 games, he's been on fire, like a level above it. And we're all asking questions, is he Premier League quality? Is he not? Judging off his recent form, I think he is. I'm not saying he's top echelon level, but for me and where he's at in his career now, I think he's 25, 26, prime of his career, working under Enzo. I'm feeling quite optimistic, and I still think his ceiling can get higher. For me, I would give him an 8.5.
Ooh.
Go on, Neil, because I have to say I would agree with you, Luke, there. I think, do you know what? Prior to the last 3 or 4 games, I would have gone lower, but I think he's really stepped it up recently. He's looked absolutely lethal. That Birmingham game, oh my goodness. That was the game where I was like, oh, hold on a minute. Hold the phone. This is a level I was not expecting. I think the arrogance of that first finish, wow.
Mm-hmm.
And, the second one was good. And he could have scored 4 goals in that game. I think he's clearly a confidence player. And now that he's getting confident, he looked good. Like yesterday, yes, he did make that awful attempt at a clearance that I think went out of the stadium. But he actually had another opportunity, which he scored, but the ref blew up for offside. But it still showed you that he had the composure and he's getting there. So I wonder what you're going to give him, Neil. But I would agree. I think 8.5 is good. If I'm being honest, on recent form. What do you think?
That's what I mean. So I'm judging it since the beginning of the season.
Okay.
He's been great because, for example, it's hard to judge a player because we can still see the ceiling is very high for him. I would give him a 7 overall this season because at times there's been that bit lacking, and it's not me heavily criticizing him, say he's a bad player. He still gets a 7 in my opinion, but by the end of the season, I think he's where you say he is. I think he's 8.5. But at this moment in time, if we take away the last 3 games, there is a room for error, and he's really growing in these last games. Genuinely, I think he is, but it's taken him a while to get that. But at the same time, he's held down that position. And you look at the people that we've gave 8.5s to so far, the likes of Wilfred and Diddy. You look at, has he been as good as Wilfred and Diddy in that position? He's probably been less than that. And that's not me trying to crap on how good he's been.
Do you not think that sort of player is inherently inconsistent? Like, people forget that even Riyad Mahrez, but as fantastic as he was, he would have games where he had like stinkers, because that's just the nature of a winger. Like, sometimes you have a game where you would make the difference and you look like the best player on the pitch, and sometimes you couldn't ever beat your man. And that's why we have options and rotation.
So the reason why I think he's performing like at a 7 out of 10 is not because I think he's a 7 out of 10 player. Somebody like a Harry Winks, I don't think he can get much better. That's why he's 10 out of 10.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? It's not to say that he's 7 out of a bad player. It's that I can see him developing. If he keeps this up, I'm giving him 8.5 at the end of the season, if not 9, because he's been that good over the last 3 games. However, I'm taking the whole season into comparison and go, he's got room to improve this much. In the same way, Callum Doyle isn't whatever we gave him, like a 7, 8 out of 10 player. He's better than that, but he's young and he's got room to grow into it. If you're hitting 10 out of 10, for example, like a Kieran Dewsbury Hall, he's got some room to grow, or Harry Winks has got some room to grow, but they're close to their limits. I don't think Mavadidi's close to his limit yet.
Luke, you got to be the final adjudicator on this, because that's a very compelling argument. I don't know.
It is a very compelling argument. Yeah. What did you go for, Neil? 7?
No, I went for the same score you did. I went 8.5. I was going to say that I've looked at our chat, and a lot of people in chat have been giving 8s. So I'm guessing I'm crowdsourcing this. That would be my opinion. But it's literally, it's your channel, Luke. You've got the power. You could give him a 1 out of 10 just because you don't like his haircut. That's what you can do. That's
the power. Like a dictator now.
Exactly. With great power comes great responsibility. So what are you going to give him?
Oh, I can appreciate what you're saying, Neil. Just for Neil's sake, we'll go for an 8.
You don't have to
in the middle. No, I think it's a fair shout, mate. I just think that the start of his season and then where he's at now. Yeah, but anyways, we'll move on. Kelechi, this is what I really want to talk about.
Go on, you take it away then.
Hello,
yeah, Luke, Kelechi.
Okay. Yep. Okay. For me, he's not been what we expected of him. Prime of his career, prime of his life. And he's not been bad, but he's not been great either. I don't think we persist of him, to be honest with you. I think if he doesn't put pen to paper with how Daka's playing, we've got Cannon, we've got Vardy. If he doesn't put pen to paper, I don't want to keep seeing people walk for free. We'll touch on that with transfers later. But for me, I've seen him pull out of challenges before. I've seen him be a bit lazy before. Yeah, sure, his link-up play can be great sometimes, don't get me wrong. But what's he on? 6 goals and a couple of assists, I think. For me, I think we persist with Daka and Cannon. I'm going to give him a 6.
Neil.
Sorry, Brad.
I think I'm with you. I think he's on a 6. I know that if Ant was here and he wasn't asleep, that he would give him higher. But I think a 6 is a fair number, considering this was his opportunity to go, look, Daka's not in the side. Tom Cannon's injured. Jamie Vardy's my only person ahead. He's not turning up. So Kelechi Iheanacho for me gets a 6, not because, and it's disappointing, but at the same time, we've got other options, and he doesn't. There's a reason why, even in the last couple of games, he's been fit enough to start. He's not even made an appearance off the bench. Tom Cannon's been getting minutes ahead of him, and I think that's part of the reason why is because they know, well, AFCON's coming soon. We need at least one striker fit, and part of that because and one person that's playing a little bit of minutes. So in that sense, Ndidi for me gets a 6 as well. Sorry, Ndidi, Kelechi gets 6.
Yeah, I think 6 is a fair remark. I think I was expecting him to tear up this division. And there's someone who will come on to in a moment that I think is doing what I was expecting Iheanacho to be doing. So let's move on to someone I think everyone's going to volunteer to take this one. So who wants to take on the new boy wonder?
You can't
take him on. That's the
Just
problem.
go on.
He's going to beat you. Who would like to talk about Abdul Ishaku Fatawu?
I'll be brief and I'll let you take it, Neil.
All right. This one's an interesting one. I think I would give him 9 out of 10. Although, interestingly, if you look at his goals and assists, he hasn't actually got as much as Mavadidi. But the thing with Fatawu is he has captured everyone's hearts. And sometimes that is important in a way that other things aren't. Like, he excites the crowd. He's that player that you feel, no matter what the situation is in the game, just give it Fatawu, we've got a chance. He could do something. He's got the X factor. He is the X factor player. He's super exciting. I think the thing to remember is for a 19-year-old, he is ridiculous. I looked at his stats and there's only one player in Europe that matches him statistically on the wing. And that player is Ousmane Dembele, who signed for PSG in the summer, who's ex-Barcelona. So that shows you the company that he's keeping. And that's like the amount of progressive carries, his take-ons. In fact, let me see if I can bring it up.
That's cruel, Peter. That's really cruel. I think Alisson Maximan can't be compared to Fatawu.
He's better than that because he's got.
It's a Newcastle fan. Don't listen to him.
Oh, right, fair enough.
Well, look, here we go. Here's the thing that kind of really proves on is look at his successful take-ons, his progressive carries, his touches in the attacking penalty area as well. Like, that's the thing that I saw that is what he's elite at, is that he's getting into the box like 3 to 4 times a game. He did it multiple times yesterday. You can see that defenders just have no idea what to do with him, that they're like looking to take him out. So 8 might seem harsh. I'm giving that just because if you look at the amount of goals that he scored, he's only scored twice for us. I think he needs to do some work on that. I think a player of this talent should honestly, if I look at like Jack Clark in this league, who's playing for a struggling Sunderland team, he scored a lot more goals. Crescencio Somerville was fantastic for Leeds yesterday. So I think that's the ceiling. And Neil mentioned it earlier with Mavadidi. It was like, you know, Fatawu is great, but it's like, this is a player that I could see this guy being sold for like 70 million pounds. That's how good he's got. He's got that explosive pace. So the finished article is going to be absolutely terrifying. But all that said, I still think that there's been so many games where he's just such a cut above everyone else on the pitch that he literally just looks like a cheat code. It literally just looks like what would happen if you put a top 5 Premier League player into the Championship. You'd expect them to be untouchable because that's what he looks like. So I've gone 8, but I could understand you give him higher. But what I will say is, what a fantastic signing. This has been like, you know, when you have your hopes and aspirations for signings, and this has been something like that elusive left-footed right winger has been literally on everyone's shopping list, Christmas wish list for the last 5 to 6 years, and finally we've got one. He is a different player to Riyad Mahrez, but the point is someone that, what did Riyad Mahrez did? He excited the crowd. He could make that difference in the final third. He could get you on the edge of your seat. This guy does all of that. Luke.
I 100% can appreciate where you're coming from with an 8. A lot of people are probably going to go for a 9 and 8.5 at the minimum, and I agree with you and agree with them as well. For me, I'd personally go a 9, but when you say an 8, that's a very strong, positive, optimistic 8, because we might remind ourselves he's only 19 years old. His ceiling, if all the players that we've signed, all the players we have, his ceiling is by far the highest. And you're absolutely, I can see him. For me, both him and Mads, I can see going for a lot of money in 3 to 4 years. Fatawu, I believe, is an obligation to buy if we get promoted. So that gives me peace of mind. We have to sign him. We've been looking for a right side, right wing, left-footed right wing since Mahrez left. And we always hear, Mahrez replacement. You're never going to have a Mahrez replacement. But this is by far the best option we've had in that right side since Mahrez. I think he's absolutely, there needs to be a stat for how many yellow cards he draws, because he annihilates everybody. Like, people are going to start stressing when they have to mark him now. People are going to start feigning injuries. I wouldn't want to play at him.
You've no idea what he's going to do and how he's going to turn around. And I'm with you. I think 8 is the right number to give him, not because he's been fantastic this season, but I still think he's got 20% to improve. And that's how I'm seeing it. Not that he's bad at the moment. The fact that he's got this extra level that he can go up, and multiple levels. And I'm with you. I think something I was thinking when you guys were talking as well is our recruitment's been sensational this season. Genuinely, compared to last season and compared to season before, where we've just had some dross that's come in, or players that are highly rated that just haven't performed. We've invested in young players. They are paying off. And it's scary to see what we're building and this monster of a team at the moment. And at times we aren't out of one of those gears. It feels like we've got a few more to go up. And Fatal is that. His ability as well. So I interviewed a Ghanaian journalist when we were talking. He goes, he can be a bit selfish. I think at the beginning of the season that was potentially true. I think that's becoming even less now. I think at times he's actually less selfish than he's actually should be more selfish with how he's playing. He's got the opportunity in the decision making to get the ball in the good positions to play other people in. I think there was a great opportunity where he put the ball. Did he have the ball? And he should have shot for goal, but he tried to play in Diddy in, and then Diddy just puts it, just doesn't get his feet right for that position. That was a great, for me. It was a great performance. But again, he should have probably shot and took his opportunities. But I think he's still a young player, full of confidence, and I think Enzo is probably going to sit down in the summer and go, "How can we get even more out of you?" Because we've not seen anything yet. We've still got another player within you that we haven't unleashed.
I'm trying to find the stats actually for most fouled player. I can't seem to find it, but he does seem to be pretty high up there in successful take on. So yeah, we'll move on. But definitely a superstar we've got here. Okay, this one's going to be a spicy one to talk about. I think Neil should take this one away because Neil is Mr. I'm equating the entire season. He's not like me and you, Luke, who just fall for the hype. We're like, literally, what did we see 5 minutes ago?
This is a tough one. It really is.
What I would say is I think you do need to take into account minutes per 90 contribution.
I know, and I'm just looking at his stats now. I was just looking at it in terms of in minutes per 90. Isaksen and Daka, we got 4 goals, 1 assist, played 6 people, 6 games. Average goal per 90, 109. Nobody even comes close. The next closest person than that is Jamie Vardy on 0.64. So like double what we've gone. 82 minutes per goal. Total shots 11. 36% of them have got. So 36% of those shots have gone in. I think he's been considering he's been left almost out in the cold. Considering his probably agent was like, I can get you a Premier League move. Unfortunately, I can't get you that. Bournemouth have declined. It's a really tough one for me because there's a really easy narrative to go 9 out of 10. And I kind of want to do that, but at the same time,
just take a look at this, Neil. This is very interesting. I'm literally just looking at this right now with you and no prep on this. So this is Isaksen and Daka, just 545 minutes. Blocks interceptions,
Bloody hell.
tackles, assists. That's quite surprising because I thought, that's the most important thing, let's be honest with you, is that in this short time that he's been with us, it's how many goals he's scored. But, Luke and I have definitely mentioned how we felt that since Daka's come into the team has played better. That's a fact. In fact, sometimes in the games, Patson himself hasn't even been particularly brilliant. You might only have had 7 out of 10. Like even yesterday, he scored 2 goals, but he wasn't fantastic. But yet the team easily won 3-0. And I think one of the big reasons for that is this quadrant here. Because that's the thing. He's faster and he's got more work rate. Yes,
and
exactly.
He's the best off the ball of the strikers we've got. I don't know about Tom Cannon as of yet, because I've just not. We'll go on to in a second.
What are you going to give him then?
Give him 8.5. 8.5.
8.5. Luke.
I'm still going to go a 7 just because the limited time I've seen him play. What I would like to ask is this for Neil. If I don't think you've been to the games when he's played, Kate, if you're still in, please put a comment. I've been wanting to ask you for a while about this. His work off the ball. So like when he plays, we've looked better, right? That's because him and Fatawu and Mavididi is absolute, like it's ridiculous. The pace all 3 of those have. I would love to see what he does off the ball in terms of drawing a defender with his pace. I think off the ball, potentially, from what I can't see on the screen, would be offering a lot more than he gets given credit for. He can be a bit poor on the ball sometimes. 2 of his goals have been tap-ins, he's had a penalty, but at the end of the day, he was there when we needed him. How many times have we complained about Kelechi this season dropping way too deep, taking a ball from being played out the back from Mads? The ball gets up there, Fatawu takes the ball up the wing, where's Kelechi? He's not there. And then that's where all the complaints come from with, we need to work on the ball in our final third when he was in. But for me, he needs to be given more time. He's got 1 more year on his contract than Kelechi. I think we persist with him of what we've seen of current form other than Kelechi. But for me, I'm still only going to give him a 7. I know his stats look ridiculous, but from what I've seen and the limited time he's played, I'm still going to have to stick with a 7. Maybe that's harsh, but that's just me just being modest, I guess.
I think with him, just to kind of play, not even devil's advocate, just give you another way to think of it as well. I think that he gets the best out of somebody like a Mavididi. And there's no surprise that you're seeing a Mavididi thrive when Daka's in the team that we haven't before. So that's one of the reasons why I give him a higher score, because if we're saying that Mavididi's as good as that, we've got to give Daka some credit because they've arrived at the same time. And I genuinely don't think there's a coincidence that, Mavididi's game has come up just in line with Daka. And I think the link-up play, I think the ability, the trust that's there in that front 3, if we're giving Fatawu high, if we're giving Mavididi high, I think Daka deserves higher for that reason, because of them 3 on the counter is frightening. And as an opposition team, I'm looking at how do you counter that, apart from just foul all of them.
See your channel, Luke? I think I would give him higher than 7. I think given that what we give, yeah.
I think 8's fair. We've only seen him, for what he's done in the time, 8 is fair. I think what drives me mental about Daka is the money that we paid for him and how much. I know we're talking about this season, but last season he was super frustrating, and he did get a good run of games. I think around the 7th or 8th match onwards, where he was starting ahead of Vardy week in, week out, and he drove me absolutely mental. And I agree with what Kate said here. But if we're talking this season, for me, what drove me mental is his fans would have warped my perception of him, where they would absolutely slag off Jamie Vardy, say he's old bones. We curse you, Leicester. You deserve to lose. Why don't you play Daka? So it kind of made me hate him a bit when it's not his fault. But credit to the lad. Similar to Vestergaard, he's taken his opportunity to run a bit.
I was going to say, it's like you could say a few players. Kieran Dewsbury Hall wasn't good enough last season in that same rhetoric. So we always have to park last season and go, yes, that's the case. But you made the point there yourself, Luke. The fact that you said Yannick Vestergaard, 15 million. What we paid last season, we go, is absolute. We wasted all of our money. Now we're saying 50 million. Yeah, he's a good player. He's beyond good player, sorry.
All right, and let's move on to striker number 4. Not someone we've really seen much, so maybe we shouldn't even give it. In fact, I was going to say that the rest of the players we have remaining there's actually going to be 4 on one page because they haven't had many minutes. So people like this are more kind of impact players. So maybe use that in your judgment. What we given Tom Cannon? To be honest with you, do you know what? Maybe what we give Tom Cannon is exactly what I've put there. Question mark out of 10.
Yeah,
because to be honest with you, because I feel like you can't really say anything, can you? It's unfair.
You know, it's like, you know, when you read the match reports and they go,
Yeah.
you came with 3 minutes. NA. That's how I'm feeling.
NA out of 10.
Yeah, let's wait till the end of January. We'll talk about that 3/4 of the season through, I'm sure.
Yeah, at the end of
That's
January,
fair.
I think will be a very pivotal time for Tom Cannon, and that's where we'll see him.
Okay, this one's an interesting one because maybe you've got enough. I personally don't think we have enough to really give a firm judgment. But Isaksen.
Maybe NA, but I'd give him a 7.
Okay, for Eunice, he's been like, he's not really meant to be a utility player, but he kind of has. We've seen him being used as a high pressing 8, I think, on both sides. We've seen him play on both wings. We brought him in as a right winger, I believe. He offers like different for Tau and Casey McAteer, but I think he's got a good football brain, Isaksen. I quite like him. I think he's not got the same pace as maybe McAteer or Eunice, but I think that his ball distribution when he's on the ball is excellent. Haven't seen enough of him. Bit of a sick note. I don't know if I think we've got an obligation to buy for him. I'm not sure. An option to buy. Sorry, I don't know if it's an obligation, but I don't really want to say too much. I haven't seen enough of him yet, but I do like him from what the limited time I have seen.
So we're not going to give him a rating either, or are we? I feel like you could give him a rating.
You could. Here. I think you could, and I think that number's a 7.
7. I agree with Neil. I think 7 with a
yeah.
I want to see him get consistency in one position.
I think that's fair.
With Atgun, I think as well, he's a player that I'm looking at and his potential going, you are Premier League ready already. It might be a little bit soon for some people, be like, what? You've not seen anything of him. From what I've seen, what he's performing, his footballing brain, his not off the ball work. I keep using that term. His ability to get in really good positions. I just think he's great. I genuinely think he's a really good player, and he's going to fill in as number 8 a lot of the time rather than on the right wing. But that's, again, with Abdul out of the team, he'll probably be the go-to. Him or Casey is a hard one. But I think he'll be playing a lot more centrally while Casey will be playing on the wing.
Yeah.
I think before we move on, I think a lot of good questions are going to be answered after January in terms of Eunice. Yeah. If let's say they're not injured, Eunice, Tom Cannon, and Dennis Pratt are going to be vital in January. Filling in for the lad. We'll talk about that later, but that's just something to mention.
And I think Casey McAteer is another one as well.
Yes.
So now we've got on to this is actually the last one for the players. There's one more after this, which is the manager, which I think deserves a rating as well. But before we do that, so we've got 4 people on here at the same time. You can say what you want. Maybe there isn't so much to say. Maybe we shouldn't even give a rating to any of these players. So, but they have all made appearances in bits and starts for the club. What we think about these guys?
Oh,
we can just say NA to all of them, which I think is fair.
I think it's worth talking about them because they have come on and they've all done well.
Yeah.
When they've been called upon, the reason why we shouldn't go, oh, well, that's not applicable, because they've all played. No, I think majority of them played of like 60 minutes plus. They've not just played like 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. If I was to go number-wise, Dennis Pratt, 7. Wanya Marcel, 7. Jacob Solashek, 7. Harry Suter, 7. 7's across the board.
Okay, so just one number. What about you, Luke?
I thought I was going to change it to go across. I was like, no, that makes sense. And also that you've done Harry Suter dirty there. There's no way he's that small compared to like the likes of Wanya.
Well, yeah, I had to size him down, otherwise it'd be a bit unfair.
There we go.
All right, we've got the size accurate
on that. On that as well with Harry Suter. Him and Yannick Vestergaard walking up the pitch together was such a fantastic sight when we were 3-0 up against Rotherham, because it was just like these guys are so massive, and just seeing both of them there, it was like, I don't know if you guys watched Lord of the Rings, but it was like, you know, a tree beard at the end of
I know you're talking
where they're marching to it. It was like that, just slowly moving in. It was brilliant when the trees have come.
I think I like Pratt. He's been a bit of a sick note, and also was not appreciated by Rodgers. And again, we're talking about this season, but the time he's been on, I think on the ball, he's been excellent. But again, similar to Eunice, you know, like the preseason, if you remember, he was played, you know, the same position as Wilfred and Didi, you know, that right-hand side and high-pressing 8. And now we've seen him move over and come on a lot for Keenan Shrewsbury Hall on the left-hand side, where he's looked good too as well. I can't, for me, for now, for 7.5, for what I've seen, which is limited. But I'm actually quite optimistic. I like Pratt, mate. I'm quite optimistic for him in January. I think he's going to be, if he can stay uninjured, I think he's going to be really important. For Marcel, he kind of got the Brendan Rodgers treatment from Enzo Maresca. He came in one game and scored a goal. We haven't seen him again. Remember the game with Chowdhury I think it was last season before, when Chowdhury had a good game. I think it was against Liverpool. We've never seen him again.
Maldini.
Yeah, but it's still our chick.
Well, what are you giving him then?
I'll
be honest with you. I personally would give all of these players 6. The only one I'd give more than the 6 actually is Stolarczyk, who would give 7, because I think he's played 3 times. And he was a bit dodgy against Liverpool, but I don't think that was his fault, to be honest with you.
6 sounds actually better. Makes sense. I think Marcel will be interested because he just signed a new contract.
Yeah.
He's probably looking at January going, now's my time.
The rumor I've heard is that he has a chance. Yeah, go for it, Luke. We can take over.
Yes, I'll be back in a minute, mate.
Yeah. The rumor I've heard is that he is going to play a few games for us in January, and then he likely will get a loan move at the end of that, right at the end of the transfer window, and play somewhere so he gets more game time. So he might make kind of 2 to 3
level, League One level.
Yeah, I've got a feeling they'll send him to League One. They might send him to the bottom of the Championship if one of those teams wants to take someone on. But I think, what they normally look for in players like this is you want to make sure that they get games right. So it's like, if there's a team in League One who's like, look, if you give him to us, he'll play every single week. That's what you want him to do, right? Because he just needs the minutes, get the confidence, be their best player. Then you make the step up. But it depends who's available, right? Because to be fair, I could see him. I mean, look, if he played for Rotherham yesterday, it'd be hard not to think of him being one of their best players, right? But the thing is, do they want that type of player? Do they want someone who's technical, who can play like that? Do they got that particular gap in their team? Like normally, especially if you're a team that's struggling, you tend to be more like, no, we need a centre-back or a centre-forward. They're the two that you want, right? Because they tend to be, normally when a team is struggling, you've got one of 2 big problems, right? You're either conceding too many or you're not scoring enough. So it's not to say that like a wide man or a tricky player can't be good, but it's like that tends to be a bit more of a nuanced solution. So we'll see. But I think it could be one of those 2, yeah.
I'm just looking at the table now. In terms of, I'll tell you the bottom 6, and you tell me any of these teams you think he could go to.
Yeah.
Before we could see, because I know Luke's gone for at
the
moment. Rotherham, Wednesday,
no.
QPR.
Wednesday, yes. QPR, yes.
Huddersfield,
no.
Millwall,
maybe, but probably not.
Stoke,
no. So the reason why I've said that is like knowing who the coaches are in charge of these teams. It's the style of football that they play. So it's funny that I mentioned QPR and Sheffield Wednesday, because they would not have been on the list at the start of the season. But what's happened recently is they've both changed their managers and they're both playing much more front foot football. And so I think that they would be perfect because they're going to want someone who can press high and has got some attacking quality and might show it in some of those games. So I think if you were to play for either of those teams, he'd be used to be playing in the pressing system where the work rate is important. Because, what can sometimes happen with players like this is they go to a club like that and they think they're a bit, Billy Big Balls. They're too good for that club. So I think a good manager that kind of like trusts them and gives them the opportunity. Maybe some of the other ones, because I believe actually I say that, but Stoke have just changed their manager, haven't they? They've got Steven Schumacher who came in. So maybe. But I think teams like that will probably go like Stoke, people forget, but their budget's pretty big, to be honest with you. Like, there was one season after they got relegated where they really went crazy in terms of how much they were trying to get back to the Premier League, and they've not managed it since. Like, I don't know about you, but you remember Stoke, they finished 9th 3 seasons in a row, right?
Arnautovic, Sakiri.
Yeah.
What's the player that I forgot his Chipper Mote used to play for them?
Exactly. They had,
who else used to play for them?
Bojan.
Yeah, Bojan. Yeah,
Bojan still has the record of scoring the most goals for any La Masia Academy graduate, even more than Messi, believe it or not. Yeah, so something really went on there. All right, Luke can join us in a bit. I'm sure he'll give his rating, but the last rating we're going to do, and I think it's an important rating, is for this man.
It's hard to not give him 9.9. I literally I couldn't have asked for anything better. But the 9.9 is it's a bit of a weird one. I could give him 10. the reason why I give him is there something he could have done better? The only thing potentially was like we could have rotated more. That's my only tiny little thing, but I understand why he didn't. And then when we've not rotated, he's took players off and we've put players in. Yeah, it's hard to just not give him 10 out of 10.
100% has to be a 10 out of 10. Like, we've seen him do heavy rotations before against Sheffield Wednesday, and everyone criticised him for it. When it comes to killing teams off, people say we should be killing teams off. But, like, in my opinion, like, we've got AFCON coming up, the amount of games they're playing. Like, let's say the last couple of games, for example, we go up comfortably, we make all the subs, you know, make sure we don't have any injuries and stuff like that. And every time we've had a complaint about him, you know, the ball in the final third, etc., all the problems and all the questions I've had of Enzo Maresca, he's always answered them positively, whilst only being his first season in a very new squad. You can't not give him a 10, if you ask me. I've got a complete crush on Enzo Maresca. I think he's absolutely been brilliant. We've needed this, mate, after the season we've just had under Bell and Rogers.
Well, I was gonna say, we've literally, what's the great, I don't know if you timed it perfectly for this, you did your maths before the show, Luke, but we're game 23 out of 46. So in terms of the half season review, this is literally half the season. I think you could make the argument that because we haven't played Ipswich yet and they're the next game, you could wait one additional game because we have to play them twice. We've only played one team twice so far, and that team is not doing so great, right? In terms of, so that's a bit unfair, but take that into extent. Halfway through the season, brand new manager, we've had to completely transform the squad. We had to make tons of new signings. We have 58 points from 23 games. We are on course for a 116-point season. The current championship record is 106. The last Leicester team that got promoted from the championship, which was a fantastic team, a team that went on to actually win the title just a few seasons later, got 102 points. So there you go. Look at the stats as well. We're 6 points clear of second place. Our goal difference is way better than even, what's that, better than Leeds? We're 12 better than Leeds.
Defensively,
defense, look at our defense. Our defense is a joke, really, compared to everyone else.
It's half of Ipswich, and they've lost, what, 3 games? Well, they've lost 3 games now, but
yeah,
half of Ipswich, same as us.
Joint top scorers now as well. That's something that probably crept up on people because people were saying, oh, but Ipswich score more goals than us, but we were now equalised them with goals. Literally at the halfway point, we are the joint top scorers. We have the best defence. We have the most points. We have the best goal difference. We had the best run in the championship so far this season with 9 wins in a row. Although, to be fair to Southampton, they, I think, are on a 15-game unbeaten run. So taking all that into account, that's just purely from the results. That's not talking about the start. Well, actually, do you know what? I do just want to bring this up as well, because at the start of the season, we were talking about how Leicester were playing and what they wanted to do. So let's just give this a little bit of a replay. This is the 3rd goal that we scored yesterday, and we can talk as we do this. So a question for everyone who's watching at home. You've already seen this, so I don't want to do this, but how many passes do you think were involved before we scored this goal?
We're just teasing with them. We're just like a cat with a piece of string, isn't it?
Look at them. Look how many defensive. They've got every single one of their players literally camped. Their highest player is 30 yards away from their goalkeeper. So that's the difficulty of what they've got to do. Look how far forward, you can see how our team are. So yeah, as you can see, we're toying with them. And you can see this is Maresca ball in action. This is how you can beat a deep block. Maybe I should have got an example of what we're like against the high press. I can probably find the clip in a moment as well. But just so you know, in this move, every single player in the team touched the ball at least once. This also was a point in the game where we had several substitutes on the field as well. So, Yunus Akgun came on, Cesare Casadei came on.
Dennis Pratt's on, Casadei's on.
Yeah, is Pratt in it here? Yeah, he is. I think he's there in the middle there, isn't he, at 26? So there you go. Here's Steffi Mavididi. Ricardo is drifted out wide. I have to say as well, someone who deserves enormous credit is this guy on the ball here, Wout Faes, because he supposedly is our centre-back. And if you look at what he does towards the end of this move, again, for those people that say that, like, oh, Leicester are frustrating, they don't attack. I'm like, I have not seen too many teams where the centre-back for the team does what's about to, pushes this high up into... This is Ricardo, left foot right away. Boom.
Sexy, eh? He unlocked the defence being a defender at least 2 of those goals that game, mate. For me, Enzo, one thing I just want to bring this up again quickly. Scott put in an interesting comment here. Talk about, a new squad, new players and stuff like that. But let's not forget that the players that stayed, their mentality must have been at the floor from last season.
Yeah, keep talking. Let's talk while we watch the footage, just because you can see. So this, I'm bringing this one up because this is a team that played high pressing football. Here you go. Look, they're trying to press our team here. Look at them. Look at how quickly they're trying to close us down. So this is under pressure. This is really what Enzo Ball's about. Or do you know what? For miscontrolling the ball there, Vestergaard is going to get knocked half a point on our season scoring. I'll go back and edit that. That's tough guys here.
No room for error. See, that's the kind of thing that for Wigan, you're like, come on, I could do better. But
that's my point. I feel he should be scoring there. But
yeah.
And then when he does that once or twice, that's when he starts passing instead of taking a shot. Because, it's like you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. You know what I mean? Like, that's when I think you start seeing him share the ball a lot more when he doesn't need to, because he doesn't want to get...
Well, look at this. This is the ability to pass under pressure. And I tell you what, the Ipswich game, look how many people we've now taken out of the game. This is a spoiler for what the Ipswich game is going to be like, because they press high as well. So in order to beat them, we're going to need to do exactly what we've seen here. So anyway, I wanted to show both those things, because that shows you that Maresca's been great at both a low block and the high press. He can deal with both. So it's 10 out of 10. So I think there's not much more to say other than making the best start in Championship history. What more can you really say? I guess you could say we've dropped some points, but I think that's been pretty unrealistic given what he's done for us. So what a massive transformation he's made. So that's the review for all the players. We've got 2 more things that you wanted to cover, Luke. So I guess the next thing that is on everyone's mind is in January, there is a little bit of a spanner in the works. What is that spanner? It's this. So, and I guess that will tie into this as well. So maybe you can combine the points together. So this is going to be maybe, if we were going to have maybe the one word of caution for our team, is what's the worst thing that could possibly happen to Leicester? It would be if several key players were now somehow not involved in the team for some arbitrary reason. Uh-oh. Do you mean like an international tournament bang in the middle of the season? Well, we'll see. Look, who are really going to be... this is what's normally our team. Actually, it's funny, look, because Castagna left. This is what we were starting up with outside of the team. So, who really is going to be leaving us? It would be, I guess, Ndidi. It would be Daka. And I guess it is most likely going to be Fatawu. So those are the 3 that may well be, and Iheanacho. That's 4 players that we might go. So I'll come back from this. So yeah, talk to me about AFCON. What's going to happen? Is it something we can cope with? What's on your mind, Leicester Down Under, Luke?
Don't forget as well, we've got Suta. Not that we've seen him play much, going to the Asia Cup as well.
But... Oh really? Is that at the same time?
Yep, I believe so.
Okay.
So it's why it's been important we get minutes into Pratt and Cannon before AFCON comes. I definitely think I won't say we're going to struggle, but I definitely think it's going to be noticeable, in particular with, I know Daka's had a good recent string of form. Kelechi's a question mark. Fatawu, though, and Ndidi. And they don't forget how we talk about how well they work together. So I think their 2 are going to be a huge miss. What's important is that the gap that we've created so far could potentially save us should we hit a form slump. But I honestly think we're going to put Ipswich to the sword before that break. So we'll talk about it in a minute. But I'm not that worried about Ipswich. Everyone keeps saying, "Oh, Ipswich." They haven't got the. I'm going to go off topic here. AFCON. I think that this is going to be the biggest test for us personally of the whole season. What do you think, Neil?
Yeah, go on, Neil.
Sorry, Neil. Was it?
It is going to be a test, but I still feel confident about what we're trying to achieve with this squad and the development that we're doing at the moment. I mean, in terms of where we are, the only issue, so the main issues in terms of, it's going to affect certain positions. Obviously, striker, half our strike force is leaving. Right wing, our main right winger so far, is going to be leaving. So who's going to be filling in those positions? Tom Cannon, Tom Cannon probably most likely, and then Jamie Vardy when he's back fit. So there's the 2 strikers. Tom Cannon, have I seen enough of him? Probably not to make a fair judgment, but of it, he's probably the 4th choice in line. Right wing, we're probably going to put Casey McAteer, Yunus Akgun in that position as well. Manu Vadua could potentially play there as well. So there are options there. I think the main thing that makes this tick, as you were mentioning earlier, I know, is that number 8 on that right-hand side. Now, I think that might be filled in by either Yunus, Cassaday, maybe, but I think Dennis Pratt was probably the person, because I remember at the beginning of the season, it was actually him. It was Dennis
Ahead
Pratt
of
and
Ndidi.
and
KDH.
KDH that was starting the games, and I think that's how they'll set up going forward if we can keep Pratt fit.
That's why I've got to say, I think bizarrely, it may not even be negative at all. In fact, what you might find is sometimes when players come into the team, as Pats and Daka has shown recently, is that they could make a name for themselves. Sometimes getting that consistency is important. And so it wouldn't surprise me if actually come the end of January, there's 1 or 2 players that you're like, well, they can't be dropped. And you'd be like, well, I'm sorry, Wilf, that you were so good before AFCON, but Dennis Pratt scored 4 goals in 4 games, so he can't come out of the team. Or for Towel, I know you've been brilliant, but Yunus Akgun's got 7 assists in 5 games or something like that. I mean, maybe neither of those things will happen. But the thing is that we have a very talented squad. It's funny how you sound stressed, and yet at the same time, you've literally listed at least 2 options for every position.
Yeah.
And that's gone. And not only they 2 options, but Dennis Pratt, I believe, cost £20 million from Torino. No, was it Sampdoria? Is a Belgian international. Yunus Akgun's a Turkish international, scored an incredible goal for them in their qualification campaign. Tom Cannon was a player that half the championship wanted. I know that both Preston, Birmingham, and I think even Southampton, a lot of teams tried to sign him, and that's why we put so much money up. We'll just do the deal now because we can deny other clubs this striker as well as get one in our own team. So look, those players themselves could be injured. I think it's really lucky that all of them are coming back at the right time. Callum Doyle's coming back, by the way, as well. So we should be deep enough to do it. And yeah, look, if I just bring up the fixtures here, I mean, the 2 games against, this one we are going to have our full team for, so we don't need to worry about that. In fact, I don't think any of the players will probably leave until after this Huddersfield game. So the games that we're missing them for, FA Cup, let's be honest with you, who really cares? I mean, obviously, it'd be nice to have a deep run. I could see Leicester going for quite a deep run, but it's a secondary competition for us this year, right? We worry about it more when we get back into the league. Coventry, that is a big game. They're a decent team. Ipswich, so that's 2 potentially tricky ones. Who we've got after that then? Then we've got Swansea at home, Stoke away, Watford, Sheffield Wednesday, Borough. They'll definitely back in time for this big game, which is the next big one after that, Leeds. So
I can't wait for that.
Yeah. So, I mean, look at it. I mean, sure, they could be, I guess, better fixtures, but they're certainly not too bad. And, given the fact that we've made the best start in championship history, the honest truth is we go into every game as favourites, maybe with the exception of Leeds away. But even then, you wouldn't put anything past Leicester getting a win, So, yeah, that's my opinion on it. I don't think it'll be as big thing. And, finally, I think we can tie this into something which I know you love talking about this because he's such a Sky Sports lover. But there is another option, which I suppose could cause havoc both ways. And that's this. So the window opens up in literally 1 week's time. Do we think we're going to see anything here? We know one thing won't be happening, and that's Lucas Beraldo, the Sao Paulo centre-back. He's signed for PSG, so... quite a decision to make. Do you want to go and play with Kylian Mbappe or Kiernan Dewsbury Hall? He's clearly made the wrong choice, if you ask me. But he's gone to PSG.
Yeah,
so he will not.
Where's your 99 percentile Mbappe? You haven't got any of those.
Exactly. Well, I think he's got quite a lot of them.
I know, that's the joke. He's probably all of them as well.
But let's just bring him up whilst you talk about that. But go on.
but even then, just coming back to something you mentioned, the fact that before we get into the January transfer window, because again, notoriously, we've never really done any business.
There you go, Neil. He's not in any of the 99th percentiles.
Kiernan Dewsbury Hall's clear still to this day. Where's his blocking interceptions? You know what I mean?
Garbage.
Yeah.
He
doesn't do anyway.
BTEC KDH, that is. But in terms of another thing to remember is the players that we lost in January. I've got a list here. You remember James Maddison, how vital and pivotal he is, and what he's doing at Tottenham at the moment. Harvey Barnes, them two themselves were 66% of our goals. Not, I don't know the specifics. They were over half of our goals and assists last season. Timothy Castagna went to Fulham. Yuri Tillemans, Suyunchu, Daniel Amate, Johnny Evans, Yosi Perez, Samore's left on loan. Victor Christensen left on loan. Luke Thomas has left on loan. Mendy's left. Ryan Bertrand's left. So that's quite a list of players to try and replace.
So let's say in a perfect world, we're going straight back up to the Premier League. Now, you would imagine if once we go up to the Premier League, we are going to invest. We want to stay there, right? Now, for you guys, I'll put this to you. If we are going to sign people in January because of this potential, disgruntled, AFCON missing people, as well as trying to develop our squad ready for when we go back to the Premier League, if we do you think we invest in youth now and develop them whilst in the Championship? And then if we are going to add quality and older players, it should be when we go up to the Premier League.
I don't think we will invest in older players, is my opinion. I think we've done that already. I think Winks and Cody were those two. I would never say no to someone if like a really good player is. I don't think that should be used against you. But I think if we're being honest, the best success Leicester had is by moving their model to kind of the Dortmund model, or what Brighton are doing, which is where you get promising young players, you develop them because you know you're going to lose them as Leicester. It's just a fact, right? So if you lose them, but you lose them for the fees received for Harry Maguire, James Maddison, Wesley Fofana, these are acceptable. Even the way that Fofana left was a bit of a stinker. I think the club realised, and they changed it with Harvey Barnes and James Maddison this season. They waited too long before getting the replacement. So I think that is the way to go. But when we say developing youth players, I think there's still something to be said. Like, we don't sign players that are, for example, we have. Fofana was a teenager when we signed him, but I think generally we tend to sign them sort of between ages 20 to 23. And then, we look to sell them on when they hit kind of 25, 26, and they make that big money move to a big club when they're expected to be, competing for trophies. So I think that's what we're more likely to see. I think maybe a different question is more to think about, I think it was, we don't want to count your chickens before they're hatched, but it's extremely unlikely we don't go up now, I think. I mean, maybe if we lose to Ipswich, it might cause a bit of a kerfuffle, but I just think we're so consistent that, it's unlikely that we don't. What positions do we even need? And I think if you look at the squad, I personally think even if this exact team played in the Premier League, we'd do pretty well, to be honest with you. How well we do, I don't know, but I think we could be anywhere between 8th and 12th, to be honest with you, which might sound optimistic. But the reason I say that is that midfield tends to be the most important area on the pitch. Yeah. I would say that as a midfielder myself, but it's true, facts. And we actually have a Premier League midfield just playing in the Championship. Like Kiernan Dewsbury Hall, proved in the Premier League. Wilfred Ndidi, proved in the Premier League. Harry Winks, proven in the Premier League. And they're pretty good. They didn't play for rubbish clubs. They played for good clubs. I mean, Leicester had a rubbish season, but they were a good club prior to that. So, yeah. So where do we need players? I think a fact that we need one, and the reason why JJ's been playing on the left-hand side but not being left-footed, is we definitely need another left-footed centre-back. That's a fact. So Doyle was out injured. So we were linked with Beraldo, and there's no surprise at all. So I think we'll sign Doyle. But for example, it wouldn't have surprised me if we signed both those players. I think Enzo will want 2 players for every position. So there's, someone pushing you for your place. That's a very Man City thing to do. So I think it's inevitable we'll see someone like that. I think another player that we'll see another right-footed left winger. Mavididi has cemented his place and made it good, and he's been great. And sometimes we've put people like Yunus or Fatau on that side. Even McAteer's played on that side. But yes, he needs someone to push him. The player doesn't need to be as good as him, but he needs to be able to push him. And to be honest with you, Mavididi's been like a really good signing overall. How much did he cost? Something like 8 million, 8.5 million or something like that. If you could literally get a clone of Mavididi so the two of them are playing off against one another, would be a great signing. So I think there's 2 positions that I see us doing for sure. And the third position I suspect we will be for the guy who won our Player of the Season award so far, which is Harry Winks, who's been brilliant. But I still think of all the players in the team, if he got injured, I still think we'd be fine, because I think most teams tend to play against Leicester the way that Rotherham played, where they're not really pressing your defensive central midfielders. So in games like that, Hamza's totally fine. But in the Premier League, we know that there's only 1 or 2 teams that really sit back. West Ham's the only one that I can really think of that play a low block. Even Everton under Sean Dyche, if you look at them play, they're maybe not as aggressive as other teams, but they certainly don't park the bus like they used to. Like, they have a go. So I think we'd need to have a rotation option for him as well. So that's possibly the 3 signings that I see. I do think it's interesting that when we've looked at some of the names we've been linked with, we have also been linked with another attacking number 8. There was this guy called Albert Gronbach who plays in Norway, although he's a Danish international. We probably will need a player like that, but I think we'll only need them because so many people are out of contract, because you're looking at Dennis Pratt, Wilfred Ndidi and Cesare Casadei. As it stands, none of those players will be here next year because 2 of them are out of contract and 1 of them is a loan signing. I got a feeling that 1 of those 3 at minimum will be here next year, and my money would be on Ndidi, but we'll see. Luke, I can see you're absolutely gagging, so I'll put myself on mute and you tell me what you're thinking. Yeah.
No, sorry. Another thing that's interesting as well is we've got a lot of players that we could easily sell. I think Ward's going to cash every last check he can, but like Everson, I think is a fair shout for. I would think that Everson. I know he's not the same kind of sweeper keeper as Mads Manson, but I still think he's an excellent shot stopper, and I would think that like he's not going to want to sit the bench much longer. There's a lot of players that you could make it like before, like when Daka first came in, I was just like, oh, we're putting him in the January transfer shop window. Now it's like, oh, hang on a minute. Look, maybe we're going to have to hang on to him. But like in terms of people out of contract, if we're going to hang on to someone that I think that like Wilf, he could be absolutely integral for us going back up. So if I had to hang on to someone and walk for free, which I don't really ideally want to do after what's just happened of all the players who've left for free, I would hang on to Wilf. But again, going back to Kelechi, if someone comes in for him, I think we sell him personally. I don't think that he is as integral as Ndidi to the squad for us going straight back up. But Everson, Kelechi, there's a lot of fair shouts for people to go out for us to make money to be able to, bring people in. But I can't sing. I agree with everything that you said. I think maybe another centre back, maybe, depending what's going to happen with Yannick Vestergaard, whether he signs or extends his contract or not. But I 100% agree with you with the left winger. Mavropanos is pretty much spot on. You can guarantee he's going to be in that starting 11 week in, week out, no matter what.
I'm with you. I think that the way that Leicester are playing, left wing, potentially a centre back, but at the moment we can get away with it at this level. It's just in the Premier League, I think they might I don't know if they'll do a lot of business. Bearing in mind, we've still got Alves probably to be able to create attention, and potentially Braybrook as well. Both of them are good players that were just beyond the on the fringes of things. So yeah, I think at the moment we're just getting things better. I don't think we'll do a lot of business. We'll maybe bring in 1 player and that's it. After that, I think majority of business will be looking ahead to summer, going right. We've got an idea now, and it will be reliant, as you were mentioned, certain players leaving the club, and there should be certain players like Iverson going, look, I need to find another club. You're looking, and people would be interested in probably buying him. You've got the likes of a couple of other players. Again, Danny Ward's another good example. Players that are on the fringe, even potentially somebody like a Harry Suter, that again is a good championship player that can get into a decent team, but he's not getting into our team, so you might as well go.
The thing is the wages that they're on, that's the issue. Like, I've got a feeling that both Danny Iverson and Harry Suter, every championship club would buy them. I don't even think they'd have a problem with the fees. But it's like they will be on Premier League wages now. They might not be on top tier wages, but they're probably on like 30, 40 grand. Like, let me tell you, Rotherham, if you combine all their wages together, I don't think it's 40 grand a week, right? You've got to really understand there are levels and levels. Yeah.
Ipswich I think they were looking for a new striker in the summer, and they've set their wage at like, I think 1.3 million for, and the wages are like 15k, which is probably at least 3 times what Harry Suter's on at the moment, bare minimum.
You mean Harry's on 3 times more than that?
Yeah.
Let's get this comment up. It's a really good one from Scott. Does it not concern you, Neil, that we could potentially need to rebuild in the summer with 8 players out of contract that are in the current squad?
Not after this year. not after the recruitment we've done in this summer and how they're playing out. No, because also they've got more time to do this season. So yeah, I'm just really excited to see how they do, because
Well, to be fair,
I'm
got
just all,
Wilf out. Wilf's
Yeah.
out of contract. Kelechi's out of contract. Pratt's out of contract. Cassaday's loan isn't being made. Well, it might be, but it's a loan at the moment. So there's 4 players in the squad or whatever.
And Yannick.
I think Yannick is out as well. There you go. So I mean, look, I've said as well. I don't think maybe I personally
some of these
am
will
not so
re-sign.
worried. Yeah, that's what I think. I think after this season, the club will give it to them, and I think they'll want to stay. And I think that they'll realise. You can just see that they look a lot happier, to be honest with you.
He raises a good point though, Anil. Like, I would much rather be doing a rebuild in the Championship than the Premier League.
Yeah, can't get them wrong in the Premier League.
So, look, lads, I know it's been a long one. I'm sorry. I really appreciate you coming in. Is there anything you want to add before we wrap this up?
Very important thing. Have a very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year to all. We won yesterday, so you should be having a good Christmas. We'll see if the New Year's good. It depends on the next few results. But yeah, hope everyone has a fantastic one. Enjoy it with your loved ones or your not so loved ones, depending on how yours goes. And yeah, ho, ho, ho.
Thanks, mate. I really appreciate your help. And Neil, thank you so much for doing that slide and running things for me. I really appreciate it. I couldn't have done it without you.
Sorry, it's been breaking
Neil?
up a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
No. I think I need to relaunch my browser because it's breaking up all over the place. But just say, yeah, thanks for having me on, Luke. And really appreciate it again. But thanks again, since your stream, I think you got 2 extra subscribers, which is great. So hopefully you get like, subscribe, all that stuff for Luke. And yeah, it's kind of without copy what Anil says, but have a Merry Christmas, everybody. We'll look forward to see everybody for the Ipswich game, because that's going to be a great game.
Thanks, mate. I really appreciate that. Neil, you want to give a shout out? Everyone that's probably here is watching is from your channel anyway, but Neil, you want to give a shout out to your channel?
Not really. I'm going to do an Anil and just go and just hand it over. But yeah, make sure you go subscribe to Let's City Down Under. You can see this down below. But yeah, make sure you subscribe, because again, Luke, congrats on 100 subs, mate. Massive achievement.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. I couldn't have done that without you guys. Shout out to Ant. I know he couldn't make it, but it is Christmas Eve, and I think he's feeling a bit rough. But massive shout out to him as well, and Chris from LTID. Scott, thank you, mate, for staying for the whole stream. You're an absolute gem, mate. Really appreciate you. Have a good Christmas, guys, and hopefully, quickly before we go, Neil, are you going to do a post-match for the Ipswich game?
Probably, yep. Probably going to do something from home, not going to the game, so probably doing something from home. That'll be a really interesting one. That will be a proper tactical battle that I'm looking forward to as well. So yeah, let's just keep rolling with this, and let's see where it takes us.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. Have a good holidays. Happy Merry Christmas, everyone, and Happy New Year, and we'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.
See you later.